Today we have Brandon Young, VFX Soup from Blur back in the day. Is now currently a CG Soup, and he is a legend in the industry. He's worked on amazing stuff. Today we will go over his incredible work that you see on the screen right now and talk about some of his tricks of how he made it. And we'll also be announcing a new version of the ATMO website, which is now a clone of the environment ATMO, but now for FX artists. So here's a new home for the FX people to hang out on. We'll be going over that during the interview about his life and all his sick, badass work. I'll also be including an FX section in our Discord for everyone to be able to hang out with each other, talk shop, and to ask for help. So let's get into this awesome interview. So we've got Brandon Young, FX Soup, CG Soup, data analyst apparently right now.
Yeah, right. Doing a lot of data stuff too. I've been trying to hedge my bets against this crazy industry. So I've been working with data for a couple of years, about 2 years now. So it's been kind of a hobby of mine, but then I've been kind of like, maybe I can pivot into this if everything goes south. So I know. I've been picking up some data jobs here and there to kind of keep afloat.
Yeah, it's definitely sketchy right now. I'm in the game industry and it's really crazy. It's been crazy in effects. I mean, the film, TV, with all the strikes, and now on top of that, you have less investors sketched out to invest into movies as well. So it's just less everywhere, and the same thing seems to be going on in games. Just layoffs after layoffs. Blazers just laid off 1,900 people apparently. Yeah. It's crazy, but these are the times. So it's always good to have a backup. So it's smart that you're getting the data analysis. How'd you get into that one?
I was like, I watched a video. I've always kind of been into the whole data thing a bit, and I was like, oh, interesting. You can actually learn how to kind of make machine learning models with it. And I just kind of took an interest to it. And I took a couple classes way back when. And I was like, oh, this is pretty cool. I already knew some Python, and then started kind of getting into that. And it's always been kind of like a bit of a hobby of mine to mess with, and it translates over to VFX, right? Because VFX, we're always dealing with huge amounts of data anyways, so those skills also help transfer over some pretty cool stuff for me in VFX. So
machine learning for sure, if you can hook up some little shortcuts here and there, make things faster for you. Build some crazy tools. So you've worked in the industry for 15 years. You've been the lead effects artist over at Blur Studio. That's when you actually taught me back in Noman when I was studying at Noman many years ago.
Many years ago. Yeah, you were in my RealFlow class.
Yeah, exactly. It was the one effects class that I took, or I guess I took one other super intro one. But that was that was all with fluids. It was RealFlow. Does RealFlow even exist anymore?
Yeah, it's still around. People still use it. It's mostly. I think you can still get the standalone. I know they kind of made this big push towards Cinema 4D, having integrated within Cinema 4D. But yeah, man, RealFlow is just, I don't hardly ever use it anymore. It's just like, I think I opened it recently to check something out. But yeah, it's not really an industry standard anymore. It's all Houdini now. So pretty much.
Yeah, we'll get all into that stuff. Let me, and later. So you've also, you've been, I'm looking at your LinkedIn now. It says 2008. That was a while ago. So you've been CG Soup, FX Supervisor at Fuse, Ghost Effects, Alchemy. And so how'd you transition from FX Soup to CG Soup? You just got tired doing effects?
Yeah, kind of, not really.
And sitting there and waiting.
Yeah, no, well, see, I originally went to school. When I went to art school, I was going to do illustration and concept and all that stuff. And then I kind of fell into VFX during art school. And then that this makes sense a little bit later on, but essentially I became kind of well-rounded during art school. And then, back then you kind of had to know everything, especially being at Blur. That was probably the biggest sticking point for me, because you had to pretty much know everything, right? Besides the animation side of things, you had to be able to comp your own shots and do some CG stuff and model a little bit. And it's just kind of, and being in the Max world of things back in the day, the 3D Max artists were more considered like commandos at the time. So we'd go in and be able to do anything, pretty much. I had to go in and be able to be more of a generalist.
Yeah.
And so now it's a lot more specialized, especially so if you get an effects person, they're just usually, they know a little bit about, a little this and that, but that all those skills translated over. And, I usually end up working with smaller companies. And so being in the CG soup there always kind of just worked out. And, I have a pretty good knowledge of the whole CG pipeline and all that. So, I can model, I can do some animation, some light rigging and all that, but it's just good to be well-rounded, especially as a supervisor. You don't need to be good at everything, but at least have a knowledge base, right, behind what's going to go on. And when you bring a new employee in, or a new artist, whatever, that you can at least be able to talk to them about things and be able to help troubleshoot when technical things go awry.
Yeah. Well, you were an art student, but were you in the military? I think I remember you saying that.
Yeah, I was in the Navy. That's why. Yeah, so I joined the Navy when I got out of high school. I did that for 4 years, from 99 to 03. And when I got out, that basically I just joined the military to pay for college.
Yeah.
Right. I didn't. That was it.
Hey, it's a good option. Smart option.
Yeah, man. I don't have a college loan or anything.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
There's some weird things to that. Like when they tell you like, oh yeah, we'll pay for school. It's kind of messed up. So how it works is once you get out, you can take this thing called the GI Bill, right? And this GI Bill will then basically pay for your school. But once you start the GI Bill, it might be different now. There's a timer that starts essentially. So let's say that you have, I think it was like 3 years. They only give you 3 years to do everything, right? So you have to kind of really buckle down and take extra classes. And at this time I was working at the same time. And
so this is after, like, at what point in the Navy did you have to leave the Navy to start?
Yeah. Well, I did some college in the Navy, got all my basic stuff out of the way. In there, it's completely free. Like you can go take any classes you want and they'll give you college credit. So I did a bunch of that before I got out. So I didn't have to take all the, introductory classes for everything. So I was already kind of ready to go. And, but then, they pay for it after that and you don't have to, touch anything. But yeah, there's that little stipulation when the clock begins. Once the clock starts, you can't stop it. So you have to keep going to school. So there's all the years you just spent in the military. So it's a pretty good, like, I better get this shit done. So.
Yeah. So you get disciplined real fast, which is what you need in this industry too. And probably the biggest reason why you got so successful, of a career, right? Moving up the ranks by being so disciplined, because it takes a lot of mental effort and patience and, learning to be especially a generalist or a well-rounded artist, right?
Yeah, especially an effects person, because it's always a calculated gamble, right? A good effects artist between, like I say, a senior effects artist versus a junior effects artist is more of like, I know what buttons to push, when to push them, right? And then press sim and say, I know this is probably going to work. And a junior effects artist, they just don't know those type of combinations right off the bat, especially for certain situations or certain shots. It's like, if I know if I change this, it'll do this, or during this, or how to, troubleshoot, essentially getting the geometry or whatever shot data you got in to mess with that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that just comes from experience, trial and error.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. But then what made you decide to go into art though? You went from shooting guns to let's draw some paper.
I didn't do shooting. I was in the Navy, so I did some shooting guns, but not very much. Yeah, I was fixing electronics most of the time. Yeah, so I had a pretty cush job. I'm not gonna lie. It was pretty nice. But no, I mean, I've always been an artist. I was big, like in high school. I loved art, and I wanted to be an illustrator / matte painter. Concepts person, and I did get to do that in my career early on. I could do a lot of matte paintings, and I still do some work here and there. It's pretty sparse, but it's always fun to go to because it's such a simple thing. No, I shouldn't say it's simple, but it is compared to effects, right? And you get to actually be creative, right? Because in our industry, as VFX artists, as a whole, you're not really creative at all. You have a couple chances to be creative, right? In the pipeline of things. And that's usually the first version you have. And if the client comes and tells you like, hey, I don't know what I want, just see what you got. And that's the one time you get to be like, okay, I get to do something really cool that's my own. because after that, the client's going to direct it and it's not yours anymore, right? And so we become more creative in our troubleshooting capabilities and skills, right? So you have to become very clever and creative when you're trying to fix problems. And that's literally my entire day, is just trying to figure out why this broke or how to do what the client wants, if it's possible, under their guidelines or whatever they want, right? So it's a lot of creative. It's almost like programming in a lot of ways. It's kind of the same thing. You figure out a problem, you solve it, and you're done. But yeah, it's not terribly creative unless you're a concept artist or even matte painter. Matte painters get to be somewhat creative in the beginning, but then too, even a concept artist, you have to kind of let go and let the client then direct you because it's theirs. They're paying you, and a lot of people forget that. It's like you're just a tool to help them achieve their vision. That's all. Yeah. So
yeah, I mean, it definitely depends on your position as a matte painter. 'Cause I'm a matte painter, and now I moved into games, and I have a lot more flexibility and creativity, and I get to literally design it with some.
Yeah, so that's cool, right? Because if you're
direct,
the senior, yeah, you get more of a absolutely, yeah. So
once you get to that, it's that level that you start hitting, like of experience where they just go ahead, we like it, keep going, they'll trust you. It comes down to the trust. So like at the beginning, matte painting would just be, okay, you're just cleaning the plate, or you're just putting some trees here or something like that. You're not composing the shot. You're not thinking about the value, the composition, all that stuff at all. And even though like you do some like gore, like let's say you worked on Walking Dead, so tons of painting gore on people, on their faces and blood and stuff. That's fun. But that's you're not thinking about composition and everything, but it is still this movie magic and everything.
Yeah, especially during like a very invisible effects sort of stuff, not grandiose, sort of like, I think a lot of matte painters, when they get into the game early on, they have this idea of it being this grandiose sort of like, I get to make these really cool environments like from Lord of the Rings and all that stuff. It's like,
yeah,
a lot of those jobs,
it takes a small number of people get to.
Yeah, it's a very small group of people. And most of the time your job is and I'm not like downing what we do at all, but a lot of times the bread and the butter is going to be the simple stuff like, we need to extend this plate here, or we need to add this here, or take the CG element that CG did and put it back here for the matte painting. And those are all valuable things to learn to know how to actually
match
make
the plate
something
and make
visual.
it look. Yeah. No, definitely. That's most of it for sure. And then the thing I like about matte painting is that it's basically a new challenge every time. It's like a different, make this crazy sci-fi thing, and make this more natural, make this like, nature, make this architecture, building rocks. What is completely different every time. So it's just, constant, like what you're talking about, problem solving. I'm sure it's the exact same thing with effects. Like, I don't know. I don't deal with effects at all. Obviously, I just, like the bare minimum. So it's now that a lot of effects people are joining in. So usually they haven't been, because I'm going to be announcing on this. Brandon Young is part of the announcement. The new home base for effects artists to hang out in. So that's before I had it for environment artists, and it's called ATMOVFX.com. And we'll show off the site once we check out his artwork. And so what you mentioned to me that you lived over in Atlanta. You were in LA, then you went to Atlanta, and now you're in Phoenix?
And now I'm in Vegas.
Vegas?
Yeah. So
Vegas!
It went from my career started in Seattle, then LA, because I was in games back in the day. So I used to do a bunch of video game stuff. And it's completely changed now. But yeah, I shipped 5 games while I was up there. And then I went to LA, and then LA, I just hopped around a bunch, and then went to New Orleans first to help out a buddy of mine, Anselm. Shout out to Ansi. He's awesome. Love that guy. He's a great effects. He would be fun. He would be a fun interview, by the way.
All right. Well, hey, Nancy, what's his
Anselm Bonsier. Yeah, I'll send you his contact.
Anselm. All right, we're interviewing you next. So giddy up, put your stuff on the website, and we'll talk.
And then so I went to Atlanta, and then I stayed in Atlanta for a little bit during the beginning of the whole thing when it became what we called Yollywood. Like Southern Hollywood, essentially.
Yeah.
I was over at Crafty for a while. Worked for Adult Swim.
But what got you moving out over there, though?
It was Crafty. Yeah. So me, I know Chris pretty well, Ledoux. And so he asked me to come out and help open up the office Crafty when they first got started out there. So we got the studio started, and it was just a handful of people. It was pretty wild. We were just working on Tyler Perry stuff for a while, which was cool, I guess, for a minute. But then, that gave them a good, I guess, base of stuff, money and all that stuff to start doing their own stuff. And that's when they kind of took off.
Yeah. And that was when you jumped over there, transition from FX to CG Soup, or were you? Yeah,
I was kind of, I'd say that was probably my pivot point was with Crafty. Yeah. Cause I kind of do everything, you know? So Chris is just like, I'll do my best Chris Ledoux impression here, but it's like, just fucking car, just to be a CG Soup. I don't fucking care. All right, Chris, sure. So, and that kind of kicked me.
He's watching this. I don't talk like that.
He would be. Yeah. Whatever, man. Whatever. He's cool though. Love Chris. But yeah, so that's kind of the short abridged version of all that. But yeah, it was cool. Yeah, I think some of the most fun stuff I worked on was probably at with this company called Awesome Inc. And we primarily did Adult Swim stuff, right? So Turner would basically subcontract them out to do Adult Swim stuff, and that was creative. That was crazy. So we would work with the directors directly, Chris and Dave, who did Aqua Teen. We worked on this show called Your Preface is Your Preface is Going to Hell, which was awesome. Everything was comp backgrounds, right? So it was all just blue screen with these guys, and we created this whole hell environment. And we had to make it look, the whole shtick was we had to make it look kind of campy, but what's the word? What the word I'm looking for is competent. Everything had to look campy but confident in the way it was done. So if you look at the stuff, it looks a little kind of like, but you kind of look at it further, you're like, oh wow, this probably took some time a little bit, So there was a lot of
is that on the site?
Not on Atmos though.
Okay,
but I got some stuff for that too. I can throw up there. But yeah, we did a lot of just like compositing and environment work, and at one point we put people's heads on CG beaver bodies, and it was crazy. Yeah.
So would you say that animation is more fun than more realistic or game? Because you worked on game cinematics too.
Yeah, I'd say full CG stuff is easier to deal with overall.
Yeah.
Because you're kind of taking out some of the pipeline of what normal VFX would be, right? So CG, you're just dealing with your animations. You're getting those as an effects artist, or even CG, if you're doing scene assembly or something, you're getting all that stuff over and done and built, right? So all your sets are done. So everything is in 3D. You don't have to worry about any of that stuff. So all your collisions are going to be good. Your animation is going to be perfect because it's CG. And there's no need for tracking. There's no need for like weird plate and color stuff that you normally deal with actual like TV sort of movie sort of stuff. The only color you have to deal with.
You don't have to deal with, hey, we're using this camera. Then, hey, we're shooting with a drone, so we have to figure out the color space on the drone. I had that as a nightmare one time. Oh god.
Color spaces are not fun. I'm not a fan of those. It's always like the whole OCIO thing is. It's always a pain in the ass to deal with. It's like, okay, why can't I just give you a linear EXR? Then you could just do your transforms there. So, but yeah, I get it.
Cool. So you've been at the mid-size, big. Now I guess Crafty Apes was smaller. I don't know. What would you actually? What do you think was the best? Like smaller versus big versus like?
It just depends on the person. I think I prefer smaller companies, working with smaller companies because I just like the smaller team. It's easier, faster, like it's smaller ship to turn if things go crazy, right? So I was at DreamWorks for a little bit doing some consulting there, and it was a big ship to turn for a lot of stuff. It was cool, but it's a different experience. If you're very specialized in something, I'd say, and you don't want to get out of that. Let's say you just want to do effects. You don't want to touch anything else. A bigger company is probably for you, because it's a very specialized sort of thing, and they just need you to do effects. Everything else is taken care of for you.
Yeah.
And that's cool if you want to do that. There's nothing wrong with that if you can stay at bigger companies. But the problem is I've hired people like that, and it's at smaller places. Even Fuse wasn't small, but Fuse, you had to be pretty knowledgeable about everything and be able to fix stuff on your own, right? So for instance, I may get a track that's not that great, right? So I got to figure out how can I make this work in my shot. And a lot of times at a bigger place, you could just be, let's send it back to tracking. But a Fuse, since it was network, we were doing a lot of network TV, and we had turnaround that would be, a week sometimes or 2 weeks for certain things. It would vary, but you'd have a really, really sharp turnaround, and there was no like fake deadlines with it. It's like this is going to air Friday, so we had to get it done. So you had to become very like creative on that side of like knowing how to fix your stuff without sending it back to tracking. Or any of that stuff, because it's just like wasting time at that point. And sometimes you have to like say this track is just not going to work, or this model is not working, or it's a big thing, especially for effects artists. We get a model. I mean, part of our job is to fix the stuff ready for simulation, right? So it's me getting geometry and then doing all kinds of stuff to it to make sure it can sim correctly. And some of those big studios, they just have tools that will just input that in here. This will fix this. Don't worry about it. You don't have to need to know what's going on underneath. And so you kind of become very in this kind of bubble. And then, like I was saying, when I hired people that were just for bigger studios, I mean, they did great work. There's nothing wrong with them, but then they just kind of sink or swim sort of thing, and they couldn't cut it because they just didn't have that production experience of being kind of like this semi-generalist effects artist, and that became a thing, especially in TV. That's you need to know how to kind of pivot quickly.
Yeah, I found that experience too. Even at a mid-sized studio, compared to like a large studio, I think it makes you a better, well-rounded, competent, knowledgeable artist, because you have to learn the other parts instead of you're not just stuck at your own little thing, right? Mm-hmm. So because there's a lot more issues that come up that you have to solve because everything isn't figured out. And
yeah, especially oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Well, I was saying that like even if it is figured out, there's something else that pops up. So, what were you gonna say?
I was gonna say that even as a matte painter now, I mean, when we hire matte painters, I always ask them to make sure that they know how to do some 3D stuff. Yeah, because now it's just I mean, as an environment / matte painter, you have to know how to do your own projections.
Yeah.
And whatever, I don't care like what you do them in, as long as they make sure they work for you. But knowing how to do that, or even better yet, if you can use Nuke to set up your projections or whatever, to set this up for the computer so he doesn't have to deal with it, make sure your stuff works. Instead of us doing this discovery that takes a day for my computer to go in and be like, oh, well, these elements don't work. No,
well, it's crazy. I was at a studio, not going to name names, but I was the first one to apparently do a slap comp and then make sure everything works properly and send it over the comper. And the comper was like, oh my God, my life is 1,000 times easier. Thank God, this is awesome. He's like, usually I just get a Photoshop file and I have to do it. I'm like, what? Then how do you know what it's supposed to look like?
Yeah, like the depth and all. Like, even if it's not even a great comp, like you said, just a slap comp, just getting the stuff in there, making sure everything works, and there's no surprises. That kind of goes with CG too and effects. We always try to do some sort of slap comp just to make sure things work, especially in effects, because if it's like a magical effect, the comper won't know what elements to use, and then you have to like help them decipher it. But it's better and that's another aspect of being creative, right? So you get to kind of lead the look on something sometimes as an effects artist. Like, this is what I was thinking. This is all the elements, how they work together. here's your comp to figure it out. But yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Well, let's check out Atmo. It's funny, like, oh, sorry, real quick. It's funny that we were talking about going from, the big studio to a small studio, and you have issues. I actually found financially, I think it's a way to beef up your income real quick.
Mm-hmm.
Is to go from big to small because they think, ooh, they're coming from such and such, and they're badass.
Yeah, yeah. And then they don't realize like they're the big place's pipeline is crap.
Yeah,
and it's just as bad at a big place. It's good to say. I like to always tell junior artists, move around as much as you can.
Yes,
to see how other places work and what works best for you too, and just to see how like a bigger place works versus a smaller place.
Yeah.
If you want to be more well-rounded, I think artist, you probably want to work at a mid to smaller range place.
I agree.
But yeah, big places. Everyone has this idea of like ILM and Pixar having their shit together. No one has their shit together completely. Like there's always areas that need to be improved, and everyone thinks they're going to be clever and do something special this way, and they think their way is the best. And
well, it's funny because like I was talking with my buddy from ILM. He's lead environment artist over there, and they were always using Clarice, and he loves Clarice.
Yeah.
And I was like, they're making me fucking learn Houdini. I don't want to be a fucking programmer and get a PhD in programming. I just want to turn this chair to turn color pink, and that's it. I don't want to be able to script all this stuff. It was just I had this long ass rant about it. He was so angry. He's being
now he has to, right? Because Clarice
shut down. And it's so annoying too because I was, Clarice. I was always like, man, yeah, it's awesome viewport, but the render I felt like whatever is kind of slow, and it was like different compared to all the other renderers, right? So you had to learn their old other place. But then they had Angie coming out, which was physically based, and it was GPU. So I tried out the beta, and it felt just like any other renderer. It was more like much easier transition. They were just missing some nodes that they're still working on. I was like, oh my god, this is going to be like the holy grail of 3D software. Amazing viewport, GPU rendering. This is going to be awesome. And then they shut down. I was like, oh.
Yeah, Clarice was that weird, awesome thing. I remember using it a lot as well. It was even to date, like, sorry to delay the Atmo thing.
But whatever.
But yeah, no, it like since it's dead. But anyways, yeah, it was easy to use. You just had your assets, you pulled them in, you rendered them, texture, whatever. And on the other hand of that, you got Solaris, of course, with Houdini.
Yeah,
it's just a huge pain in the ass.
And I feel like
I like it, but it's a huge pain in the ass.
And do people really have they figured out the one way or maybe couple ways to really do the USD workflow in Solaris yet? Like it seems like it's still kind of figuring it out.
Well, so
I've been out of the game from film for a couple years now because I'm in games now. I know how to deal with Solaris, but at the time it was just like I was figuring out Solaris. We were all like, "All right, we're going to switch over to USD and everything." I'm like, "All right," I had to figure this stuff out in Houdini.
Yeah, it's there's the issue with USD. It's not really an issue, but the use case for everything is that. You work in a very specific way anyways, right? So it kind of pigeonholes you in a way of working where you have to work in certain steps a lot of times. So it's from my experience, and what I know, not a lot of studios are using it right now still. The ones that do use it are mid-range to bigger studios with bigger shows. It's not really developed out of the box for someone just to jump in and start doing all the shot work without a lot of setup. Like initially, like if I'm doing stuff at home and messing around, it's fine. It's cool. I have my own little pipeline at home. I can kind of move stuff around and figure that out. But if you're a bigger place, it's not like something you just say, hey, let's use Solaris and USD. Let's do it. You have to really formulate your pipeline around the USD format and kind of come up with a good workflow behind that. And to be honest, man, like I don't know anyone. I mean, I could be wrong if anyone else is listening that you guys are using USD
in the 100%. Comments. What the fuck are you talking about?
You're talking about because it is kind of the promised land, though, right? When it does work, it's amazing. Like it's really cool. Like
it was fast.
Yeah, it's great. You know the idea of having 5 different artists working on the same environment at the same time and having it all update instantly, like on the back end for rendering. It works that way, and it's awesome as long as you get it all set up right. But it's just it's a big learning curve for a lot of artists, even myself, to go in and start learning it's a new software. Like Solaris was built to be outside of Houdini, essentially, right? That's why it doesn't look like anything in Houdini.
Yeah.
It's completely different. It's a scene assembler and USD authoring, so you have to kind of get your head wrapped around that and knowing what you need to do. And there's just a lot of stuff to learn. It's a whole new thing, and I get the reservations behind it because it's not for everyone, and especially, like I said, not for I would say, I guess it would be for smaller studios if you're, really nimble and be able to set up stuff quick. But from my experience, like recently we were working on a shot, me and my buddy were testing out this, and we were both coming to consensus, like, this is not worth it for a single shot. Like all this work,
Yeah.
for us just to get it out really quickly. We didn't have a lot of time. But if you're working on a bigger show and you start at the beginning of it, I think it could reap big benefits later on.
Yeah. The Hydra viewport is what always attracted me. So I'm just like, can I just move around my viewport? That's why I like Clarice.
Exactly. Yeah.
All right, cool. So let's check out ATMO. And a lot of people listening already know about it, but they don't know the new one. And a lot of new people, FX artists, have no clue what ATMO is probably. So
yeah, probably not. Yeah.
If you check over here, there's a new map painting tool called DMP Exporter. It's a Photoshop plugin that will export out all your layers with one click and simplify your color workflow a lot, which will be a huge lifesaver for map painters everywhere. That will save you a lot of time. So go over there and check it out. Here's a little sample of it, and keep an eye over there as it continues to grow. Let's get back to it. All right, so this is ATMO, atmovfx.com, and we're going to launch the FX side of ATMO. So it's not going to be combined with the environment side. It's going to be a separate thing by just switching back and forth. But all the same previous rules are applied. So the homepage is all senior quality work, and you you create a profile on ATMO, you build your profile, whatever. During that application, you say if you're a senior, you have to get approved to be senior, and then your work just automatically gets put onto the homepage. Meanwhile, if you're not a senior and if you're doing senior whips, then it will all go to the community section. And I will show you that stuff on the environment side. If I click up here, switch over to the environment side. So this is all environment art, concept art, photography that's related to environments, anything environments. You can even take stills from film and put them in there to use as reference and everything. And we even have view black and white values to check stuff out. And if you go to the community section, this is all the non-senior and senior whip stuff. And what's really great about this is that since everything's organized by your experience and skill level or title, whatever, recruiters can find artists very easily. So if they're looking for student artists, junior artists, mid, senior, and senior whips, or it's not senior whips. So just go to the homepage to find seniors. But if you want to look for like a mid artist or junior artist, you can just filter it by that and find your artist that way. And you can even filter it and type in, let's say, rocks. If you're saying we're looking for a mid artist that wants to sculpt rocks, and you type in rocks or cliffs in there, you'll find just mid-level sculpt rocks and everything. You've got the income survey, interviews, our Discord to hang out with us on the Discord, and blogs. So everyone on ATMO, I just recently released this, has the ability to post blogs, or articles, tutorials, anything like that. So it will go to the blog page as well as your personal profile. So all your followers will know that you have an article, and they'll just go to your profile and click under your profile name and go to the blogs. So you also have some products in here. I'm working on a marketplace for people to be able to sell products. And as of right now, I'm only allowing ATMO senior approved people to be able to sell products. So everything will be very organized. You don't have to go through like ArtStation or Gumroad, try to find everything. And you're like, oh, did a junior make this? I don't even know if it's like properly made. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It's such a pain in the butt. I hate all that. So now everything would just be organized. This would be the environment section. You go to the effects section, and now you'll find all the, in the future, you'll be able to sell HDAs and anything you want. But it'll just be under effects. So the income survey which I think everyone that's watching this should go. It's anonymous, completely anonymous. I have no idea what you're doing. You don't even have to sign up to the site to fill it out. But I just want people to empower themselves on getting an idea of how much people are getting paid, so they can get an idea of how much they're worth. Because artists, let's be real, really suck at negotiating.
Yeah, no, and that's like we've talked about this over
Yeah.
instant message, but yeah, I'm always very open about with artists and stuff too. If they ever come ask me, hey, how much should I be making? I was like, well, you should probably be making this, or yeah, absolutely. It's important for us to talk amongst ourselves about how much we're making. It's not like a bragging right thing. It's to help each other out, make sure we're not getting screwed over, because we don't have a union. And but yeah.
Well, it's crazy. Like, I'll talk to seniors and I'm like, wait, you're making how much? That's like junior level income. Like, what the heck are you doing?
Sometimes. Yeah. Well, it's like, well, this is good enough. It's like I had a junior guy who turned out to be really, he's a fantastic dude. And he was just, I kept telling him, like, man, you need to be making more. And he's like, well, it seems like a lot. I'm like, it's not about whether you deserve it. It's whether you're not deserving of it, but you what you're worth, right? And it's important to know that for sure.
Yeah, no, definitely. Like, even just knowing, let's say, okay, I remember I was at a studio. I was just talking to the guy, and he was saying, "Oh, I'm making $200K a year as a matte painter and working just I think it was just 4 days a week, or was he already gets off earlier? I forgot what it was. I was like, what? That you could do that? What? That exists?" And so, like, that's the thing. You wouldn't know unless you're talking with people. So we really need to beef up the income survey and just, make it go viral and just empower everyone. Because honestly, studios, there's a very, 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 very small amount of studios that actually care about you. So it's expected to go from studio to studio, work on short projects. So empower yourself, take control of the situation, and let's help each other, right? So this is the homepage, and you can go to like the games effects. So if you're a game effects artist, you can just upload it and put it under games. So I saw that you did game cinematics in here, so you put them in here. So that's cool. And then the film, TV, all results, animation. So if you're a stylist, animated effects, there's you can put that in there as well. Whatever, like, it's self-explanatory. And the thing is also, I put open to feedback for people that actually want feedback, and because people will just comment on something where like, I already finished it, turned it in. You don't want to be stressed out hearing about stuff, right? So if you click the open to feedback and you want the hard critique. What's nice is that now your name has a blue check mark on it. So on social media, you're actually complaining about it before. Someone actually on the Facebook group, they're like, where the heck did Brandon go? I missed that guy, because I posted that I'm going to be interviewing him. And we miss him. He disappeared. And you told me why.
Yeah, I mean, I'm on, whoever, I forget his name, who asked that or said that. You showed it to me. But yeah, no, the big thing is I'm not on Facebook. I'm pretty active on social media elsewhere. Like, I'm really active on LinkedIn.
Yeah, you're on LinkedIn. Yeah.
And, I do have Instagram. I don't post there very much right now. I should be doing that more, but I haven't. But I'm usually active on those two things. I'm not on Twitter really. I think I had an account at one point. It's just it becomes too much, right? And it's just I'm not a huge fan of social media anymore. Back in the day, I loved it. I was all over Facebook and stuff, but now I was like, I don't want to share my life that much.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the big thing is that, like, having the blue check mark is that when you're getting the feedback from someone knowing that they're a senior, they're going to take it more seriously. And so some of their ego can kind of just be pushed away, because a lot of times you're getting feedback and you're like, is this from someone that, because send you to the wrong path, or because they maybe touch CG once or twice, it just sees, it tries to filter out a lot of that stuff. Because you told me you got, like, some people were like, oh, your advice sucks. And you're like, well, I've been working on this for how long? Sure, whatever.
Yeah. No. And yeah, I mean, there's there was that always comes up, right? So I mean, if you want to, I always use my wife and other people too to look at my work sometimes, just because sometimes people who haven't done our stuff also has a very good indication of what works and doesn't. Maybe they won't be able to explain it to you sometimes, but that's the audience, right? It's
Yep.
not our peers all the time. It's someone else. So I'll have, my daughter or my wife look at something like, why doesn't this look real to you? Or does this look real?
Yeah.
And they're like, oh no, it doesn't. And like, well, why doesn't it? And they'll be like, well, I think it's something right here. I'm like, oh, gotcha. Because they're seeing it with fresh eyes. We don't have those eyes anymore. Like
Yeah.
that.
No, I send it to my wife all the time, and I'm like, hey, check this out. And she starts going all over the place of like, well, this. I'm like, well, I'm not. What about this spot? It's like, okay, well, I get exactly what you're saying. Is that, especially if I remember I was learning a figure drawing, they're always just like, send it to someone that doesn't draw, but they've seen humans like their whole life, so they know something's off, but they can't explain it.
Yeah. Well, we're wired for that, especially for faces, right? I mean,
Yeah.
that's one thing. You get 1 centimeter wrong in a face, then it's going to look weird. We can draw trees and houses and all that stuff and rocks. You can draw them completely wrong, and no one will be able to know.
Yep. Yeah. So, just trying to make this a collaborative environment for people to learn, give advice, grow, and all this stuff. So let's go into this. Let's go to your actual profile.
Yeah, so I just uploaded on I think this is my demo reels. Yeah, so this is or maybe not, but so I have a couple different portfolios in there. One with just old demo reels from I think 2011 to recently now. I think like 3 years ago. I think I made my last one. But yeah.
Okay. Cool. So let's check out. Let's go to FX. Or do you want? Well,
Yeah, we can go left to right. We can do left to right.
Yeah.
It's all good. Yeah.
FX. So there is actually one thing I want to point out. I guess I can do it when I'm opening it. So on every video, is this not enabled on this test? Let me go to the home. This is not live yet. Let me just see real quick. All right. So apparently I need to enable it on the actual portfolio page on the effects site. There is a folder here that lets you add that video and images, whatever, to an actual library. Mm-hmm. Or a reference library. So if you're doing a project and you're saying, I want a bunch of fire and explosions, let's just look up fire, and you get a bunch of stuff that you like. You can just add it to that, basically creates a group, and you can just go to that into your reference library, and it's just like your portfolio essentially. So it's just a way to help you with your projects, build a reference library of stuff of your projects. You can name it whatever. You have multiple ones. So here's the thing, everyone's listening, making this site is completely transparent. I want to make this our favorite place to go to for art, essentially. Like, I want to make it our dream home. So give any suggestions on the Discord. I have a section in there for suggestions of like what you guys want, issues that you're seeing. Let's just try to make this amazing. So let's go to your effects page. Here we go.
Cool. Yeah, it's all this stuff there, but some of this stuff is pretty old, but I just threw stuff what I had up available. Most of the newer stuff was in all the reels anyways for the most part, but I do have some like individual breakdowns and stuff that I've done. I need to be better about that. But yeah, it's just, especially as a supervisor, you don't tend to take a lot of big shots anymore either. You kind of just want to be able to support the team, and I still do some big shots here and there just to make sure my chops are still there. But I'll let all the young guys take all the credit and do all the fun, hard stuff now.
You spend more time not giving yourself a heart attack. All right.
Yeah. I usually end up having to fix their stuff sometimes, so that's always fun. So.
Oh gosh. All right, so let's check out the Batman, because you got to start with Batman, obviously. So you used Fume FX and Houdini.
So they're actually used. I put Houdini as a placeholder since we didn't have 3ds Max, so all this was done all in Max pretty much. But
okay, so I added that since you told me about that last night. I added 3ds Max in there, so now you can add that in there.
I think we might have used some Houdini somewhere in this, but this is before it was It was even at Blur at the time. I think I was the only person at this time using Houdini, but I don't think I used it really on Arkham Knight. I did use it on this Goldfish commercial spot we did and some other stuff, but
Okay, cool. So let's check it out. Full screen.
yeah. So this is like I did all this final comping for this. I think Paul, I can't remember his name. He did all the scene assembly and lighting for this stuff. He was really great scene assembler.
Cool. So what was the task? Like you were told, okay, make some crazy, like it's coming out of the water. This is, I'm assuming he's coming out of the cave or something.
Yeah. So the whole deal with the Bat Cave in this shot was it opens up in the middle of this like lake, and so the Bat Cave is down there, and then he comes roaring out of this cave that's opened up. So there's this, it's hitting the lip of the water as he's coming out. So they wanted the Batmobile to come out, splash some water around, and then take off. And so I ended up doing this. This is all real flow in Krakatoa. And I think maybe some fume in this for sure. Yeah. For some light mist, but yeah.
So what makes you decide to use certain programs versus just one?
Well, at the time, this, the only real fluid simulator that I knew really well was Real Flow. And then Houdini at the time when this was made, it was out and about, but it wasn't, I would say, as widely adopted by this point. This is like, I think they had like version 12 or 13 of a Houdini. So it was there, but I could just do stuff much, much faster in Real Flow compared to, before Houdini became really big, it was just Max, Max and Real Flow. So,
yeah, I remember when we did the Real Flow class, it was pretty straightforward. And, they specialize in water. So how would you compare, let's say, Real Flow to Houdini's water now? Would you say it's as user friendly, or it's just better quality?
I'd say, overall workflow wise, definitely Houdini. But as ease of use, Real Flow is pretty easy, I guess, to get started in. But I definitely wouldn't go back to it. I wouldn't suggest anyone to use Real Flow now. Just because I hate using third party stuff, then bringing the data into like Houdini, having to render it. It's just like, if I can do everything in one package, I can manipulate my source, animation. I can, on the fly, I can adjust the velocities right then and there, recache out, render it, rather than having to go into Real Flow, re-export the animation that I made adjustments to, then take that stuff and then re-import it, make sure it works, then render it, right? With Houdini, it's just kind of a one-stop shop. So I would say it's definitely probably harder to get used to, but with all the learning tools, it's not that bad.
Yeah. So it looks like you had, let's say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 4 passes of simulations. Did you, for the rain part over here, was that also simmed to have the headlights, or was that comped?
That front part there,
Yeah.
So that front part was it was all in scene assembly. So Paul, when he made his scene, I just grabbed what he had for that, and the rest I just did. So all the effects, mist and water there. So this is a combination of a few different things. I'm doing something with it's dumb particles or non-simulated particles, fluid simulated, I should say. And then on the outside, I have actual fluid simulated particles. That's why it gets a really cool looking ripple to the outside. So it's kind of a common technique to kind of combine the both sometimes to kind of fill out your areas and make it a little bit more real looking. So more believable.
Cool. Yeah, this is really sick.
Yeah, it's an old one, but yeah, it was a fun one to work on.
How long would it take to sim this stuff, especially versus today, since you did it so long ago?
Not that long, really, to be honest with you. Like this, I remember having, I did the base sim, which is the kind of the big chunky parts, which is the mesh. That didn't take too terribly long because you're only dealing with that front part, and then when it hits, so it's not that long to do that. And then the rest of it's just filled out with Krakatoa, secondary passes and all this other passes I was doing in RealFlow and bringing back in and rendering. And so that kind of fills it out, right? So if I just had, that one pass, it wouldn't work, right? So I needed multiple passes of filling and making sure that it kind of looked more like, white water being shot up. And you kind of see how I'm sandwiching the elements in between each other.
Yeah.
I'm also using a kind of a trick in this with this comp. We comp this in Fusion, so I ended up using Z depth to mask in areas. So I actually rendered everything without a matte for this, and then I ended up except for the mesh, I believe the particles and all the white wire stuff didn't have a matte, and I ended up using the Z depth to then mask in so it looked like it was inside there.
Yeah,
the reason
cool.
I did that is because if the animation were to change, I could just go crazy with it without having to worry about anything, right?
Yeah,
so.
That's cool. Krakatoa, do people still use Krakatoa?
I'm sure they still use it. It's still around. I haven't used it in forever, but yeah, it's
that was just a like extra particle shooting off of particles kind of software, right?
It's just it's a particle renderer. Yeah, so I did a lot of cool stuff, but yeah, it was just mainly for if you wanted to, render even billions of particles, you could do that. Yeah.
Cool. That's cool. So how much art directing was involved in this? Were they picky?
A little bit, yeah. I mean, I remember having to go back and forth, especially on this one, quite a bit. But it was just more about getting that back water looking right. The shooting out was always fine for the most part. This main pass here was good. But then it was just kind of like a little bit back and forth. And it was a blur at the time, so it was, sort of fast turnaround on this, not crazy fast, but
Cool. All right. Let's move on to Elder Scrolls.
Yeah, this breakdown's kind of a mess, but this is all right. It's just because there's so many things going on, and it's fast. Yeah, I didn't really do whites for this. I was just kind of showing the elements for each one, with and without.
Were you able to hear the music on it? Let's just mute that music.
Yeah, I couldn't hear it. So.
Okay, I couldn't hear what you were saying because I was hearing the music.
Okay.
All right. That's sick.
Yeah, and this is all fume and thinking particles and max.
I remember when this came out.
Yeah, this is probably, I remember working on this. I had assignment to me 17 shots, and I don't know how I did it. To be honest with you, like I really don't. I don't remember how I did this. I mean, probably I had Brandon Riza sitting next to me, and he's like probably the best effects artist, one of the best effects artists I've ever worked with. Man, that guy is a
all right,
machine.
Brandon. I'm gonna have to get you on here.
He's out of the game now. Maybe he might. I doubt he would do an interview, but great guy, man. I learned so much from that guy. Just in like how approaching things and how to just simplify. I mean, my whole effects career, really, I learned my core values from him. Just making things as simple as possible. Like, you're never better than the defaults. Like, that's the thing I tell all junior artists now. Like, no matter how cool or how smart you think you are, like, always use the defaults first in Sims, so that way you can at least have a baseline of where you're going with things, and sometimes the default stuff works just fine. It's not about what you like either. It's about like, I mean, you have to like it, I guess, but at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. It's like, what does the client or the CG soup or VFX soup, whoever you're reporting to, like? And because the client, at the end of the day, kind of controls everything.
So the models that are given to you, is it like super decimated, low res kind of proxy stuff?
Yeah, for this we had some proxy models ish for stuff for emitting and all that, but yeah. And then again, this is like something we couldn't do a lot of in Max at the time. We could decimate the stuff and kind of do a deform or something on it for this, but in Houdini now, we just effects artists. Even when we have something really super high res, we can just we can make it lower on our end and just make it work, right? And Max, I might have to go back to Modeler or something, or someone else who's messing with this to spit me out something different, like some locators, or a big technique in Max was always like parenting a null to something, to high res mesh, and having that null then parented, or having something else parented to that null, like a sphere for emissions. Like just like kind of hacky shit like that.
So life is just easier now.
I won't say it's easier. It's just more flexible, and knowing now I can do whatever without having to worry about someone else it's more liberating for sure. Yeah.
Cool. So you did all the smoke on the bottom, and then the stream, the streak or whatever, and the
smoke. Yeah, and the smoke coming off the fella there.
Cool. So this streak, is that just a bunch of curves or with polygons on it, just with noise, and then you glow it, or like how do you guys do this in the effects world?
Yeah, that's all this is. Yeah, this is just simply a animated line. Really, we had, I think for this stuff, I want to say we had the animation team do a base line for us that was just kind of connected, right? And then we ended up doing a cloth sim on top of that, and then adding noise. So the line was attached to him, and then we did multiple lines, if I remember correctly. And then we just, the shader was easy. We just had a little bit of fall off on a glow, and then we just glowed the crap out of it in the comp.
Yeah, that's sick. Like I love the tendrils, like because it's not just okay, she has a whip. It's like streaks. It's organic.
Yeah, it has like some stuff falling off of it and stuff too. There was like there's a gloopy stuff that wanted to come off of it. Yeah,
that's cool. So was it animated with different curves, or was it like an effects thing?
It's been a while. I'm not sure. I think it was probably just one curve, and we probably ended up adding curves to it. Yeah,
cool.
It was, we ended up making. I remember we made a setup for it, and then it was pretty easy to apply once the workflow gets it all done.
Do you know if did you light the stuff too?
Yeah. I mean, this was fun to work on. I liked it. I mean,
no, I meant light.
Oh yeah. So we
of course you liked what you did.
Yeah. No, we lit everything too, like, except for the scene itself. So the scene assemblers would light all that stuff and build it out. So the effects guys would just come in at the very end of the pipeline a lot of times, and we would take their comps, make sure that our stuff is working. We would end up lighting everything, rendering everything, and then comping in our final effects on top of their scene assembly comp. And that's how we would comp it in. So the scene assemblies at Blur, those guys are the true heroes. Those are the guys that literally are like, man, back then, those guys were it was the best of the best, man. Like that
was the thing, right? They were superheroes. He was like, how are they doing all this stuff? And it wasn't a huge studio either.
No, it wasn't very big. I mean, I remember just like watching and learning from all the scene assemblers, and that's also part of me too. You wanted to be able to learn from those guys, and it was cool back in the Venice days. Everyone's like, sitting in the same place, and we can go around and see what everyone's working on, and you could ask someone to come look at your stuff, or you go talk to the scene assembler and be like, hey man, here's my caches. Can you render this out or whatever? And those guys were just superheroes, man. I learned so much from those guys, especially Tony Brakovich. I don't know if I hope you listen to this, but he was like the best, one of the best, man. He taught me all kinds of cool stuff in Fusion to do in 3D. Could do all my comps in 3D in Fusion, so I ended up doing that a lot. And but yeah, it was just crazy, man. Yeah, that was before like mega scans and everything was modeled,
Yeah, I know, right? Now it's just like drop and play.
Yeah, it's crazy. People kind of forget how to actually make stuff now. So
yeah, well, the thing is that it makes you a better artist overall, anyway, because you were forced to literally know every single fucking thing.
Yeah, again, I don't think anyone should be like I don't know. I'm a big proponent of being a generalist.
I am too,
rather than being just completely one thing, because you kind of become, especially in this economy, you're not employable. Like honestly, like if there was a matte painter, two matte painters, and one knew 3D and the other one didn't, I would, even if the other guy wasn't as good as in 2D as the 3D guy or the non 3D guy, I would hire the 3D guy for sure. like just because they know more. I can give them stuff, and I don't have to do their job for them. Yeah.
Yeah. So what this shape over here? Do you remember what was told to you? Because it's such a random thing. Was it just a thing you just randomly decided to do, or what was the direction?
Yeah. No, this was like these shots were pretty quickly. It was just like, hey, here's the kind of the approved look. I think Brandon Riza came up with the initial look of everything. So we ended up using his setup for most of this stuff, and then it was just pretty much kind of plug and play with some adjustments on my end for each shot, because each shot is different, right? They're going to be moving differently, so I won't have to change the settings to make it work. But yeah, we had this whole like green fire sort of smoke coming out, and that was just kind of it. And these shots are so fast, you know.
Yeah,
you can tell that these are the actual shot lengths too. So it's like, this is it. Then, you know, boom.
Yeah. That's cool. I want to get to, I guess, going over techniques or methods used for this is outdated. Or
yeah, I'd say it's outdated for sure. Yeah, it doesn't. Yeah, this is pretty old, but this is a good idea of like the max and thinking particles. You know, for this guy breaking.
Yeah, I remember when like thinking particles was like the first big thing.
Yeah, I mean, even for this, I use ray fire for this shot here. This is all ray fire. There's no thinking particles in that one. I did this shot. I'll never forget this shot because I did this whole thing in not the rendering, just setting it up, getting the buy off from the play blast in a day.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, that was one of my more fond memories of getting an approval on that. I was like, whoa, because it was like it was a long day. It was like 12 hours, but it was cool to have that all done, you know. And all this stuff is this is thinking particles, just them breaking. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, cool. Let's move on. Is there any more recent stuff in here?
Yeah. If you go to the Hawaii 5.0 or that car explosion down at the bottom from Tales of the Walking Dead.
Ooh, Walking Dead. Let's do this.
And of course, my reel has more stuff. I just uploaded this. But so this was a pretty fun one. We had having to do a few different things for this. We had to replace the initial explosion. The client wanted to augment the explosion to make it bigger, kind of come towards camera. We had to add more fluid coming out of the hose. And you can't see it in this, but her handkerchief is on fire. I had to attach fire to that. And then we had to add cars in the background there. You can kind of see those are CG cars that we added.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, see, nowadays a director will say, no CG included. Because they did their own fire.
Yeah, we blew everything up. Yeah. And
fucking assholes.
Adam Schwartz
really pisses me off.
Yeah, it's so stupid, man.
It's just this new marketing ploy that, because Marvel, they rush everything in Marvel, so the CG, they don't give the artist enough time to make the CG amazing to like the most photorealistic thing you can get. And people just assume that's CG. It's so obvious CG, even though it's like everything's visual. Like 99% of the stuff you see is CG. So they just want to say no CG involved, and it's like, how do you sleep at night lying like that?
Yeah,
just give us some credit, for God's sakes. Like, whatever. Anyway, I can go on a rant for that forever. It just pisses me off so much.
Yeah, it's pretty annoying.
And then people like literally first like, dude, there's no CG. I'm like, bullshit, there's no CG. Pisses me off.
Yeah, and their definition of CG is kind of weird too. It's like, well, everything that touches the computer is, I guess, CG. Then so even compositing would be CG.
Yeah, exactly.
At some level, right? So.
Yeah. That's the next step, is to clone the site for compers. Actually, I'm actually going to do that too. They don't actually have, like, at least you guys for FX, you can post some stuff on ArtStation, Facebook, I guess. But compers, like, what do they have? I don't think they have anything.
No, they don't really. I mean, you get like, I'm sure they get some other little forums and stuff they go to, but yeah.
Cool. So this was done with Houdini.
Yeah, completely Houdini. I used Axiom solver for this.
That's the GPU solver, right?
Yeah, it's great.
See, I'm not that bad for mapping.
Yeah, not too bad, Dan. Not too bad. But yeah,
cool. So is there any like special techniques that you want to like reveal to your listeners?
I wouldn't say special tech. No, there's like one thing I like to use for explosions. is a lot of people will do will just kind of emit something like a particle system or have their fuel source or whatever to just kind of like, boom, done. What I'd like to do is I'll do kind of an emission of fuel as a gas, so essentially just fuel in the air, and then I'll ignite that like a real explosion, right? So it's a lot more combustible and it looks more real, because if you look at some explosions, especially fuel-based explosions, a lot of what happens is you get these vapors that are in the beginning of it, right? So I'll have that going as well, so it doesn't seem so fake looking a lot of times. So that's one thing I use here. They kind of, unfortunately, didn't like something in this final one that I had, was you kind of see where that road is dark back there. It kind of like it's like just darker
Over here.
No, if you go to the left.
Okay.
Yeah, they're right there. So it's like lighter to darker. You see how like it's wet. So they initially had this fuel thing there that looked like it was all kind of just saturated with fuel, right?
That was already there, yeah.
Yeah, so I had it like emit out a little bit, like the fuel kind of caught first, and then did the explosion. And they didn't really like that too much, so they took that element out. But I thought it was cool because it kind of gave it this like kind of kind of feel to it.
Well, see, this is the thing that you were mentioning, like you just don't fall in love with your work.
Yeah,
because you may think it's fucking awesome. You spent so much time doing that probably, and then they're like, no, we don't go to this.
yeah, exactly. You get to let it go. Like that's the thing. I mean, dude, like that's you. I mean, dude, everybody's listening, just let go of your stuff, dude. Do not. You're being paid. Just do what you need to do. Don't do any more. If you think it's cool, put it on your Be Real or something. Save it if you can. But yeah, just don't get attached to your work. It's just a job. Like, you should like what you do, but don't get obsessed about like,
I think the biggest skill to have is to being able to decipher the art director or director, and just asking enough questions to really get everything out of their brain, to like figure out what the heck are they trying, because you're making it for them. You're not really making it for yourself. So it's just like, if you can get everything out, have all the all the questions answered, dyslexia. And then you can, less revisions would happen, because like that's how you get faster in general. You like, oh, well,
you make a really good point, right? I mean, so you're at a senior level now, and so you're kind of like helping that art director direct, right?
Yeah.
And so as a normal VFX / effects artist, the CG suit, or my job, would be to do that, right, for them, to help kind of decipher whatever the VFX suit maybe is thinking too, right? And you'd be surprised, a lot of VFX suits are not that creative. They're not as creative as you would think. They don't. Some people just don't have that vision until they don't know what they don't like until they see it, right? So it's like, I don't like this. Like, okay, well, let me show you something else. I don't like this. So yeah, you're right. Absolutely, kind of exhausting your questions and knowing that dealing with a client, that's a whole like other art form. Being able to deal with the client, and because every client's different, sometimes showing too much is not good. Sometimes showing not enough is not good. So you have to kind of like, you kind of have to figure that out too, right? So, because that can mess up your relationship with that client too. Because some people want to see just finished work. Some people want to see a play blast. Some people can't understand what a play blast is. So you can't show them a play blast. So then you have to explain, well, this is going to take more time because I can't show you a play blast.
And everyone's different. It's definitely an art form. It's personal, relationship skill, social skills. So everyone out there, talk to as many people as you can. Don't be a little nerd hanging out in your hermit lifestyle room.
Always ask questions. Like, man, I tell all my team all the time. I'm always like, I'm probably just a better Googler than you sometimes. That's probably it. There's nothing that you cannot not Google usually, especially for Houdini. And also I have this giant library of files that, I'm always on Odd Force. I barely post on there because, every time I think of a problem that I have, I go to search. I'm like, oh, someone's already solved this. Sweet. Someone made a file for me to look at. So I hardly ever post on there because the questions are always are always answered. Those it's always good to have that. So, but yeah, always keep files. That's another good thing for a good effects artist. Like always, you got to set up. You think it's worth it. Just keep it though. Pack it away. It'll probably come useful later. For something.
Yeah. Well, see, on this site, this could be a hub for everyone to write your blog, write your little tutorial breakdown stuff, and upload like, whatever plugin you want to help people or whatever, so your scripts or anything, whatever, just to, to help the community out, search things, little tricks, tips.
I would just want to say too, like as effects artists or just CG artists in general, like everyone just kind of come together, chill out for a second. Because I feel like the whole community in Houdini is kind of becoming a pissing contest on us.
Yes.
Like,
thank you for saying yes.
So just like be cool, man. Like it used not to be like that. It used when it first started. I remember you going Odd Force. Everyone's just so welcoming. And for the most part, Odd Force, most people are, but it has this whole thinking particles mentality now of kind of almost elitism, which isn't good. It's just like you realize you're just working on a computer and you're pushing pixels. Like your job is honestly not as important as you think it is, and just be nice to people and be just care and share. Like just if you learn something from someone, shout them out, pass on that knowledge. I mean, I do that. I try to do that every day. Like, I try to pass on even stuff that I think might not be that useful. I'll pass it on to my team and be like, hey dudes, I just figured this out. Check this out.
Yeah, it's fun, like that's the thing.
Yeah.
It's a collaboration. And I would say that working from home, I really miss the collaboration or the camaraderie, like being from person to person. But I'm still sharing, like, guys, check this out, check that out, check out this new tool. It's like, it's just fun. And you want people to like get those skills. And it's like, what?
Yeah, you want to be invigorated. You want to have that. I mean, you want to not be as jaded anymore. Like I'm not that jaded. I'm not trying to say I hate VFX and all this stuff, but there's a point in your career where it's you realize it's just a job. This is just a means you're in, and gosh, this is kind of getting on the deep end a little bit, but I recently had this thought, probably about a year ago, and it's like, what am I without VFX?
Yeah,
and you have to take a step back because as a VFX artist, you really dedicate and sacrifice so much of yourself learning this stuff, right?
Yeah.
I was telling junior artists the other day, I was like, you have to, if you want to be good at this stuff, do it when you're young, and you're going to have to sacrifice a lot of nights. Like you're going to have to do your job and then go home and learn more. And if you want to become really good at this stuff, especially just technically, because the stuff is moving so fast, man.
I know.
Have to keep up.
I mean, things are technically, I guess, getting easier and easier as the time goes on, but it's just so much now. I feel like everyone should be a generalist now because things are easier to do. It's like what you said, mega scans. So drop it in there, kit bash.
Yeah,
it's like there wasn't a thing. Kit bash when Kit Bash first started. That was like, whoa! You could just someone sent out a pack. It was like remember Vitali sending out that stuff, and like other people like, whoa, we can just kit bash some things together. We don't really have to know how to model. It's just but now it's everywhere. And then if you just know the fundamentals, then you can just add on and make it that much better. But before, it literally had to be every single thing just starting from scratch.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So being a generalist is more fun because you get to do some other things and be like have ownership of the whole thing. But
if you like a challenge too, you like solving problems, go for it. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. Like the whole I think maybe it's just a social media thing, because before, let's say, CG, so it was a CG Society, they just closed down. They just ended their website.
Oh, wow.
So it was CG Society, right?
Yeah, there was CG Society. Yeah.
Yeah. So they closed down, and everyone loved that because back in the day, like what you're saying, they're all like in the forums, sharing and helping. Sharing is caring. Yeah. So
it was a much smaller community back then too.
It was. So that's the thing. Now I'm thinking that people are just like, well, if I share one of my tricks and techniques, they're just going to take my job. Yeah. But it's like, they're not going to take your job if you don't have an eye, first of all. Like, I mean, if you have an eye, first of all, like, because that takes longer than any technical skill.
You're not selling. You're not going to get rid of your job. Trust me. If you're a cool person if your work is decent, you're going to be fine. Like that's the two things I always look at for an artist. Like they can be technically lacking in areas, but if they are a joy to work with and just awesome person, I can teach them everything else. Like, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
you cannot not teach a person not to be an asshole. That's just not going to happen, right?
They gotta
Like
go through some like therapy boot camp stuff.
whatever, yeah, go deal with that off your own time. But yeah, if they're cool and they have the hunger and they want to learn it, and hey man, come on, like let's figure this out, you know. And if they have a decent eye, and that's just something like you said too, like some people just don't have an eye. Like you can give them reference and they'll give you back play blast or something and be like, this looks nothing like this, like at all. And sometimes they just don't have it. Like they just don't have that eye yet. So that's something
Yeah, it's definitely something you can develop. And it's also, at least for the environment side, I have some things, like I have a video that's actually his title, Become a Better Artist. And it tries to break down exactly like how to see and how to look at an image to help dissect other images. Because once you can learn some basics, then you can learn how to look at other professional work and be like, well, what is making their work so good? So then you use that into your work, you know, using like how you need to learn how to really use reference to help you make good stuff. And like how a lot of times you're just kind of looking at stuff and you're like, I guess you make it something like this. You know what I mean? Building that skill, I think, is like one of the most important, because that will just exponentially make you improve way faster when you learn how to dissect images.
Yeah, realizing that your visual vocabulary of what you think looks like something is probably wrong.
Yeah.
Like everyone thinks about a chair a different way. Like if I told you to draw a chair and I drew a chair, it would be two completely different chairs. So our visual vocabulary is completely different. So like you're only as good as your reference. Like, yeah, you're dead on. Like always use reference and have that stuff up always, even in effects, like, you know, in CG and whatever, you know, if you have reference, always have that stuff up, because you're more than likely at some point to go down a rabbit hole or a science experiment, as we call it in Houdini sometimes, and just go crazy. And then you look at like your reference, like, well, I fucked up. This does not look like anything like it. It looks cool to me,
yeah,
but this is not the reference. Yeah,
it's cool stylized, but make it bigger and more glowy. It's not real. All right, so let's check this one out. Hawaii 5-0 plane crash.
Yeah, so this was an interesting thing. So me and a buddy of mine, a colleague, I should say, Robert Spaniolo, shout out to him. He's awesome. Me and him worked on this. We had 5 days.
5 days.
5 days for this.
So well, go on. Sorry.
Oh, no, that's it. I just had 5 days, and it was pretty rough. You know, we were both kind of doing sims, getting stuff going, and we kind of came up with this. I'm not extremely happy with this. The only reason why I even show it is just that, hey, you know, we did this in 5 days and it came out.
Well, that's what I want to discuss. It's like, I think that's so important. And it's kind of the same thing that, you know, what people see with the Marvel stuff. They work on something, then they have to scrap and start over and everything because they have no time to work on it and make it so perfect. So like, what would you have done differently if you had that extra, let's say just an extra week to work on this?
Yeah, an extra week, I would have definitely made this impact better, you know, like, right. And if you keep going, as it gets, the camera gets, you start to see the particles more, like right there, they call them ping pongs. I would have drastically reduced the size and added more particles to kind of get more of a actual splash look to it. Right now, it looks like just particles, unfortunately. And we just, like I said, just didn't, we had like, 5 days. That was with the comping too. So initially, I think I did this original sim in one night, and then we get a couple iterations on that, and then we were rendering and just sending stuff to comp, and comp did an amazing job on this thing. We had to extend the water too. If you go forward, you see there's that plate boat there, right? Yeah. So we had to extend the water to match the plate there, so it would seam up. You know, because we had that.
So is this is plate here, and then that's
CG.
All,
yeah, anything behind. CG? Yeah, that's all CG, and then right below, you can almost kind of see where it happens. You see where the high frequency noise, that line right there. Yeah, that's kind of where the 2D ends.
Okay, so all this background is.
That's all plate. Yeah,
that's plate. Okay, so this is all CG. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, and this was in Houdini also.
Yeah, all Houdini. Yeah. We rendered the plane was rendered in Houdini. Is modeled in Max. I think Buddy Gavin did the plane. I think, but we didn't animate the plane, of course. But yeah, we just sim that sucker in, and so
Cool. Is there any secret anything on this you want to reveal?
secret sauce. No. Oh, well, I'll tell you one thing about fluids is that, and I even told you this probably in the real flow class. It's easy to do a sim, but getting it to rendered and then also hitting notes. That's where you kind of filter out the senior and mid level people at that point.
Yeah.
Just knowing how to adjust for notes and stuff. That's just a big thing, and be able to kind of interpret or kind of counteract like what's coming in. You kind of have to have stuff built ahead of time to kind of counteract when you know notes are going to come in. Like for instance, if we didn't want a bigger splash, we could reduce the velocity on the collisions or something like that to reduce the initial splash. It's just stuff like that. But then there's no like secret sauce though.
Cool. I also want to add that any user, there's a feature on ATMO that I have is I want the keyword search to be really good. If someone's watching this and they see, okay, well, this could be water, they could go to edit artwork and add an additional tag to.
Oh, I can do that. Oh, so I was wondering if I could do that.
Yeah.
I was going to add that in there, but I wasn't sure.
Yep. Yeah, you can do. Oh, on your end, you can do on each individual. So you have the when you're making the portfolio part, you have the overall tags, but then you can go inside the group and go on each individual art piece.
Okay.
And change whatever you want to custom change anything in there. But then like as I'm viewing this, I can actually go in and hit edit artwork and add a tag that, maybe you just skipped or missed whatever.
Yeah.
So it's, it's supposed to be, I want to make the site this kind of like just collaborative kind of thing.
Yeah.
All right, cool. So let's see. You want to just jump onto another one or?
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah.
Check
See what else I got up on this thing. Probably
Universal Pictures
presents. Yeah, this is DreamWorks. We can go with that if you want. This is what I got when I went to DreamWorks. They contacted me to come in and help direct the piece for the Jurassic World Camp Cretaceous thing for their inner marketing, and just kind of they released this online so I can share it. But this was the initial test. I did everything except for create the dinosaur, the Velociraptor asset, and animate it. Dan Lopez at DreamWorks, shout out to him. Awesome, fantastic animator. He did the animation for this in the camera, and then I just did the rest. I helped kind of direct it and made the environment. Yeah, and of course, this is just pretty much all speed tree and mega scans. So for this. And then I did some vellum kind of plant foliage as it interacts with the plants there. That was kind of it though. You got a lot of good feedback. What's that?
You lit it also?
Yeah.
Cool. And they wanted it more, like it says, a new animation. What was it? Less cartoony look, but
yeah, they wanted kind of less cartoony. They still kind of wanted a bit of an animation look to it, of course.
Yeah,
but they wanted it kind of more because the whole series is a pretty gritty series. I mean, people die and stuff in it. It's on Netflix if anyone wants to check it out. But it was a cool experience. It's a lot of great talented people over at DreamWorks, man. Yeah, they did some really cool stuff with the assets. So now this is not the final asset for the show, of course, a little bit more cartoony looking, but it looked pretty cool. So
that's cool. So you did everything. So you have Maya and Houdini.
Yeah, I didn't do this little intro bit, but yeah, just did.
Oh, you didn't do the sphere and
I didn't do the DreamWorks logo. This is from design. The design team did that, and then I just ended up kind of making this little environment, lighting it, rendering, composited it. Yeah.
Cool. And this was, so you speed tree. I can see where is it? This is probably Megascan.
Hell yes, Megascans.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah. So just scattered. You scattered in Houdini.
Yep. The scattered Houdini, and then whatever. I took a path. So I took his path of his animation, and just did a quick thing where I took any of the trees that he would probably be touching, and then I isolated those little ferns and stuff and made a little vellum rig for that. And so when he walks by him, they kind of just interact with him a little bit there. You kind of see it.
Cool. And vellum is just like this faster simming cloth, or
Yeah, it's a point-based solver. So it primarily just deals with it's called PBD, point-based dynamics. So it's really fast. It's scalable to a point. What's good about it is that you know what your sim times are always going to be. Pretty much like once you get your point count down, you can kind of estimate pretty well how much your sim time is going to be. It doesn't change very much, of course, unless you change your point count and whatnot. But yeah, it's really fast. It's awesome. Vellum's, I use it all the time for all kinds of stuff.
Cool. So would you, because there's vellum and then there's Axiom, and then what else does Houdini have? Just
I have tons of stuff, man. Yeah, so they have Pyro. Pyro is the standard, fluid software ish for smoke and fire within the Houdini, which is fantastic too. The only reason I like Axiom so much, because it is CPU and GPU based, is just the whole workflow for Axiom is really nice. It already has a lot of stuff built into it. I don't have to build like turbulence fields or wind fields. It all has all stuff built in. I don't have to go in and mess with DOPs. Like, as fun as that sounds sometimes,
you just want to get it done.
I just want to get it done, man. And but knowing, I would say, backing up a little bit, it's good to know that stuff too, to see why they built it the way they did. Just because, knowing how to do it from scratch versus just having something ready to go, it's cool. Like that's great. But I think also knowing why and what works for what reasons, so you have to kind of have a bit of a basis behind that.
Cool. All right, let's check out the Real, because the Real has the Walking Dead stuff.
Yeah, this is the newer-ish stuff. I put all my reels in here except for a couple old ones.
All right, so let's check out FX, Brandon Young. So this is all done Houdini?
Yeah, all Houdini, all Pyro, not Axiom based. It was before. Well, Axiom was around, but this was just too much for Axiom. Pretty much. I actually, for that scene, that fire scene, I ended up having to split that up into multiple sims, of course. So each walker had their own sim, and then the fire on the back there is also split up, kind of what we call clustering almost, for that back part, so we could officially render or send that stuff in time. But this was pretty fun to work on.
So I remember back in the day you mentioned Phoenix, Chaos Phoenix.
Yeah, people still use Phoenix. The Phoenix is it's pretty useful,
and that was mostly for fire and smoke, right?
Yeah.
So when you
Max though.
Yeah, exactly. So would you say the quality out of Houdini's is better, or?
Yeah, you just get more flexibility. Phoenix, you can, I kind of jokingly say you got like 2 or 3 versions out of that tops, because you don't have a lot of leeway of controlling stuff as well as you do in Houdini. Like for instance, in this, we had the walkers. What I ended up doing, a little trick we did for this, since we didn't have we had sparse at the time, I believe, but for this, the sparse, I think it was 18 or 18.5 when I did this. But so there's an old trick where you could essentially isolate the movement of your people walking, right? You can make sure they're not translating anywhere, right? But they'll still be moving, Yeah. So they'll still have the animation, but they just won't have the translation. Yeah. And so what you'd end up doing that at 0, isolating that transform, and then taking your sim and just doing your sim on that, right?
So then you would take the sim and animate the transform with the sim.
Yeah, so you would take that X form that you stored, restore your zombie and resort or your walker or whatever, and restore, and then put the same transform back onto the grid, and it will look like it's moving with it. It's kind of a trick. Yeah, so that way you're not dealing with, that's kind of the older way of doing it. I think I didn't use sparse for this because I didn't like the look of it. It was inherently different looking sim because I wanted to do kind of a mid to small scale fire, and there's kind of a technique for small to mid scale fire to get it looking right. And sparse, for whatever reason, I just couldn't at the time. Now I use it. But at the time, it just couldn't get that nice kind of licky looking flame without looking really like there's this look to flames back, even with fume, looks like really sharp. Like it's hard to explain. Effects artists will know this when you say, "Oh, that looks like a fume sim." It's like, oh, yeah, it's a fume sim. Yeah,
So
there's
is
a
it like
certain
the
look.
smoothness here that looks?
Yeah, so the smoothness, almost the
So it's not just.
viscosity of
So
the
it's not
flame.
motion blur so much. It's actual flame that is
Yeah, you
making.
kind of want it, like especially for small to mid scale range sort of stuff. You kind of want this almost I had to think, just kind of a thick, like a thick flame to it, right? It's almost like it's really blurred out,
Yeah.
not a lot of detail, not as much detail is needed for that sort of stuff for up close as you would think. A lot of people will just res their stuff up really high. And what that ended up doing is it counterbalances the look because it adds too much detail into a small flame. And the small flame doesn't have that much detail because it's just a little flame, right? If you
Yeah.
add more flames to it, of course, it's going to have more detail. It's almost like zooming out on a noise pattern, right? So you kind of want to zoom in on the detail and have less detail. And then in that case, you don't really need that many voxels to represent the flame because you're essentially kind of zooming in on it. But yeah, that's I guess a trick, so to speak, or just I wouldn't think it's a trick, but more of a I don't know, life hack or something, effects hack.
So on just this character alone, like how many different elements do you have on it or sims?
He is just, I believe, one. So each one just has one sim, I think.
Okay. So you don't have like a sim of fire that's small flames and a sim that's bigger, thicker.
Oh
Like
yeah.
kind
So
of water, you have like different,
oh no,
small,
yeah,
big, medium, small. It's like, the typical painting technique for environments, big, medium, small size shapes. I'm assuming
yeah.
it's the same thing with effects.
Yeah, kind of. I mean, so for this, we end up painting attributes for emission and fuel sources on the zombies here. I ended up doing that, and I don't think I ended up doing more than just one sim for each guy because you just had to make sure that the note was we don't want to cover the faces, right? So we want to make sure it's wrapped around their chest or their arms. That was one of the big notes for this. But your thought about the more large medium, like so for instance the fire on the back on the wall there, I did that with a bigger, much different settings almost really than what's on the zombie to make it look a little bit more detailed and more large looking, like a large scale fire, to make sure it kind of fit that looks like like a bigger fire rather than a small fire. So
Okay. Yeah, it's interesting that the note was don't cover the faces because what that does is it helps like compositionally and visually it just looks better because now you have it's not just
yes.
fire everywhere. You have areas of rest, separation between the subjects. Like even just
Yeah.
here, you see the jaw, so that helps. Just value control. It's
Yeah, silhouetting, right? You get to see
yeah,
it's actually something walking through.
yeah. You can actually see it behind here. It's completely silhouetted. It's nice. It's pleasing to the eye compared to just hey, cover them in flames.
Yeah, another thing too, when doing fire like this, even on this frame, you can kind of see where the emission is at. There, you kind of see where the fire is happening. Another big thing we always like to try to do is making sure that fuel source looks transparent up into the flame. So we have this kind of almost this curve that does this, kind of like up, sort of like it comes, it's transparent and then it's not transparent and then transparent again because you kind of want real world flames. If they were to set this guy on fire, his fuel source, whatever he would be lit with, right, would be a little bit clear probably. So we kind of, even though it's kind of weird, right? We're almost trying to mimic what a stunt guy would do. Because if we put a solid piece of flame on the end of that, where his body's touching, it will look fake immediately. Even though
Yeah,
it could be real, right?
yeah.
So it's getting that look of what flame should look like when you have a fuel source there. And because we're all used to seeing, the only people I've seen on fire, of course, are stunt people, thankfully.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the Hollywood thing, right?
So we're used to seeing that.
Yeah, we're used to seeing that. So even in the back there, you kind of see one guy is fire. Since we have this perspective on him, it kind of looks a little fake, but on the right side. But yeah, it's you kind of have to shade. And that's another thing too with fire. It's not all about the sim; it's a lot about the shading. Like you can get so much length out of a crappy sim, to be
Yeah.
honest. Like you can really shade it well. If you can shade it well, and then you then work on the sim,
Yeah.
because then it'll just set in, right?
And it's just all pure gradients, right?
Yeah, it's just gradients. Another trick. So here's a little trick I like to use too. Is for comp, I'll give them a couple different passes, or I'll give them a beauty pass, and then what I'll do is called the temperature RGB pass, right? And so what that will do is I'll have the range of temperatures for RG and B, right? And so they can then take that pass and then color correct it, right? Based off temperature. If they don't like the beauty, cool. You can make the flame look like whatever you want with these 3 channels. And that helps a lot.
That's cool. People are going to enjoy that. Good tips and tricks. Cool. Oh, actually, there's more in here. I was about to close out. Yeah, that's cool. Yeah. And it's all this, the same going on there. Yeah, you see what you're saying? It looks, when people look at the ref, it looks really sharp and like it cuts off like right there. Like, but then you're saying like the softer blurriness.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Let's see what this looks like. Did you keep these flames or were they?
Yeah, we kept all those flames there.
It's interesting to see the grading. So
right, it looks crunched, right?
Yeah, it looks super sharp and detailed, and then when you go, where is it? Come on, right?
Yeah, it really messes with the.
It makes it way softer.
yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. So then everything else, so of course you match it to the plate and stuff. So that's what you're talking about, is that softness. Yeah, totally. That's cool. This is a sick shot. How long would this take to do?
This took probably about altogether probably 2.5 weeks. Just a lot back and forth, because we can do initial sims in a day usually for everything pretty quickly, and then it's just getting the notes after that. So
now, are people doing the human army sims all in Houdini now, or are they still using what was that Golem or whatever?
Oh yeah, people still use Golem, I'm sure. I mean, I'm not in that side of the world. It's great. I heard great things. There's also this other thing inside Houdini that people can grab too called Atom. Apparently I haven't used it. It's ATOM. It's supposed to be a really good crowd solver, but yeah, a lot of people just seem to be using Houdini as well for their crowd stuff. This was an interesting shot. A lot of back and forth. I think this shot took something like a couple months to final.
Oh wow! Okay, why?
Yeah, just the going in frame by frame and going, this guy's a duplicate here. Can we move this guy over here? Oh, we need to.
And yeah, it's on the screen for how long?
Yeah, it's wild. Yeah, they wanted this tornado, kind of this they call it a hurricane of zombies going around. We actually rendered this in deep, and the comper had a lot of fun with that because we were having so many notes for me to address. I go, hey, why don't we just render this in deep and see what we can do? And comper name of Sean, I can't remember his last name. He did that, and he really made this turd shine. So.
So what did he do? Like add different value adjustments? Like what can he change in the deep?
Yeah, and he could literally just go in and select. We had cryptos for we had cryptos for groups of guys. We had cryptos for individual guys. So he could go in and relight people or change their color of their shirt or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Oh, man, that's a lot of data.
Yeah. Crowds are a whole different skill set too. Like I know enough to make something, but having a crowd TD, it's worth it if you're doing a bunch of crowds because it's all about ingesting the assets and getting them ready for the sim. The sims are easy to do. Like anyone can do a crowd sim for the most part. It's just for the most basic stuff, I should say. But the hard part is really getting it ingested, getting the assets ready.
Yeah. Cool. This is Houdini. I guess you're saying everything's done with Houdini in this reel?
Yeah, everything was probably done with Houdini in this, yeah.
So what would have been the difference between here, Houdini, versus RealFlow?
A lot of stuff. Well, so for instance, this the whole surface there is all CG, right? So everything in this is CG, of course. Yeah. Just having the ability to have my spectrum or water surface, as we call it, right, in Houdini, that integrated into my sim that's falling down seamlessly. You can do that in RealFlow, but I'm doing this via displacement and masking and stuff. It would just have been a nightmare, honestly, to do something like this in RealFlow. I couldn't even imagine, to be honest with you, man. It would be crazy. Yeah. It's just the flexibility is just way better. I can go in and resim certain areas really quickly or whatever. But yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, it's cool that you got these bits over here.
Yeah, and those were just funny enough. What those were almost like air pockets that were refracting. So under the mesh, there would be some empty spots. So it almost emulated like real air.
Yeah, that's cool. So happy accidents.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I didn't plan on that. Yeah,
that's sick. Cool. Did you light it too with all the fog? Cool. So effects are they're lighting a lot of their stuff as well, or
depends where you're at. That's a thing, right? So if you're at a smaller shop, even Fuse, you're kind of expected to you were expected to kind of light your own stuff. Ideally, an effects artist could light their own stuff, but there's places that you just give people caches and they light and render it. So it just depends on where you're at. I'd say it's a good knowledge to be able to do that, though. I think it's not even good; it's a kind of a must. You should learn how to light and render your stuff because you're going to have notes coming back to you from the lighting artist, or and they're going to be like, "Well, this is breaking here when I'm rendering this. What can I do?" Or I need this AOV. It's a special AOV. You need to know how to make that stuff and render it and make sure it works. Yeah,
exactly. So let's check out the other stuff. I really like this fireworks thing. So is it just a simple plugin for fireworks in Houdini?
There's a preset. Yeah, you can use a preset. This, luckily, they already had a bunch of fireworks in the back and they just wanted some extra ones. And then I also did the, if you go back to where the explosion is at, the boat explosion, that whole explosion is CG. So that's it.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Yeah, that looks real, man.
Yeah.
That's cool. Yeah, I like that bit right here. Yeah. And then
we did all the money falling. Not all of it's CG, but a lot of those bills there, especially ones that are close or falling, are all anything with the fire on it is CG. So
yeah. Yep. Yeah, that's cool.
It's not one of my favorite explosions. I hate that explosion. We can talk about it if you want, but
yeah, I'm just trying to get back to it. There we go.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of things wrong with this explosion, but they seem to like it. This is for network TV. MacGyver. I think this is from MacGyver. They just wanted something quick. Wanted a couple of days. Yeah, they had a new TV show. Yeah,
really? Huh.
I know, right? When I started working on it, I didn't realize. Oh, wow, okay. It's okay. It was. I think it went 4 or 5 seasons, so it got this.
Oh shit! Okay.
But yeah, there's just all kinds of stuff wrong with this. Played a little bit. I'll kind of go over it here a little bit. If you go to the end frame, maybe. Yeah. So this, ideally, I wanted to adjust this a bit more, but this is I would say this is a good representation of work for like network TV, right? So network TV effects doesn't really exist that much anymore. It's all kind of streaming now, but I only have a couple of days to do this. So, there's like a couple elements in here, 2 or 3 elements or something, but this whole explosion doesn't look that real. I think it needs to have more burnout, and if it's a gaseous explosion, a fuel explosion has more blacks in it, bigger plumes and stuff. But I think this was my first or second attempt, and like, yeah, cool, render it, send it, we like it. The client liked it. All right, so I was like, cool, all right. The client liked it, I like it. Fine by me.
I know every time it's just like, is it good enough? All right, go next.
Yeah, but I like sticking this stuff on my reel too, because if people come and ask me like, oh, well, what's the deal behind this? And so I'm not trying to down my own work, but it's like, sometimes as an artist, you kind of let stuff go and realize there's a story behind each shot too, right? So coming in knowing what my brief was and how much time I had, this is what I could do, and I think that's important to know. And I think when you see effects on TV, a lot of people get hung up on it looks like shit. Yeah. I was like, hold on, you don't know the production. I guarantee you, the artist behind it is very competent, and I'm
Yep.
sure the team is competent. I'm guessing the management was terrible, or the client was terrible, or they had no time. You know, like that's usually the reason. And this is why I like showing this sort of stuff on my reel too. It's like, hey, this is
Yeah, no,
it's not
TV
all
is
it's not all
fast.
perfect.
The turnover rate for TV is super fast though.
Yeah, I love TV though. That's what I love fast turnarounds. I love
Yeah.
that sort because it gives you a very focused approach to things, and you have to be very good at thinking on your feet. And it's almost like my little adrenaline high I get from it, honestly. Yeah.
Yeah, and the thing is, you just jump on to the next thing. So if you're working on something forever, you kind of get bored or burned out. You're like, all right, I'm seeing
Yeah.
the same thing. Like your eyes can't see any of the issues anymore at a
No,
certain
they
point.
can't, and you can't troubleshoot at some point. So it's really, yeah. I hate working on films. I've worked on a few big ones, and they all in the same way. You go rounds and rounds and rounds, and you go back to some old ass version you did months ago. And,
Yes, that's the worst, man. They're like, oh, the first one. No, sorry, let's do another one. Then they always take the first one. They always like, oh,
yeah,
man.
it's like, well, you guys
It's just a waste of time. You're just like, why am I even doing this?
Yeah.
It's no, that's there's definitely frustrations in a lot of like areas. Like, you think, oh, I'm working on a big budget film, and it's just like, it sounds magical. It sounds like the most ideal thing to
Mhm.
go to. It's great because they really nitpick stuff, and it's great to train your eye with. But at a certain point, I mean,
Yeah, there's a different skill set to have working films versus TV. I think both are good to have, but at the end of the day, it's all going to be streaming on Netflix, and people are going to be watching on their phones.
I know
So,
nowadays, especially, like I would love for it to get back into theaters. That'd be great, but
yeah,
yeah, I mean, people do have huge ass TVs now.
that's just true. And there are people that like to get in there and pixel fuck it.
And then, of course, it's also on the screen for literally 2 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the other part. It's just like, at the end of the day, why am I working on this for months and months and months when they're not even really looking at it? It just comes down to your own kind of like,
yeah, and that you kind of you have to realize too, you're getting paid. I like to hammer home the fact that this isn't your work, and it's kind of I hate to say, it's like kind of do what you're kind of told, and hopefully the supervisors will take accountability where they should be, and just do as good a job as you can do with it, and don't get attached to your work, like that's just a big thing I like to kind of repeat.
Yeah.
Because I'm not happy with this, but I'll show it on my reel just because there's a story behind it. It's like, hey, this is took me this long to do, and
yeah, and then when you're going to another studio, they're going to understand that. They're going to be like, okay, it's for TV. That's insane that you got it to look that good at that time. They just assume that so you don't have that much time to work on it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, this looks like a silly one.
Yeah, this is the DQ thing where there's a little shark there with a shark going through his water, and again, we didn't have much time on this, so they just wanted some water.
I mean,
splash.
it looks legit to me. Like, how much more can you do to it?
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah, there's not a lot of extra stuff we want to do. We just kind of wanted to splash, and I don't know the specifics behind all my little techniques for this one, but it was pretty straightforward though. So
I remember you showing this to us when you were teaching.
Yeah, this reel is kind of a comprehensive reel. I kind of took some bits and pieces from different years, and because I've never done kind of a one and all reel, before, and I figured I might as well throw this because I have some cool stuff on my older reels that I like. Yeah,
That's
this was
really
all
cool.
real flow
That's
here
sick.
in Max.
Did you have a lot more time to do this one?
Yeah, we had time to do this one.
Yeah,
so.
You can see like it's you look at it, you're like, fuck, that's
Yeah.
you worked on it.
And the animators did a fucking crazy job on the tentacles and stuff. It was cool.
Yeah, that's really sick. Like, so you basically have the job of making it kind of look wet, or like that.
Yeah, it's all the oozing stuff coming off of the ink or whatever.
Yeah,
I do all that stuff. I was the lead on this project, so
that's sick. That's so cool.
Yeah, lots of moving parts there.
It's really cool when you see the ooze come down over here. So yeah, they wanted layers.
Yeah, the whole thing was Well, at Blur, I worked on the Girl with the Dragon Tattoo sequence, and they wanted the black. They wanted that look
Yeah.
for this, so I was like, okay, well, we just did that.
You didn't do any of the eye stuff, did you?
No,
Okay.
that was all animated. Yeah. So this was interesting. Like this was all real flow, and there's so many things I wish I could fix in this now, but and these aren't all the shots I did, but I learned a lot of stuff. That intro shot there, that right there, that's not even fluids. That is just a little trick I used with at the time. It was frost, so I took two spheres, actually two particles, right? Made one big, one small. I did a slight trail off the end of that top piece. You can kind of see, right? If you come in a couple more frames. And then since they're particles and I can mesh them together, they just it fake that surface tension look to it. So
that's cool. So then you just rendered it to make it look like water. Yeah, that's sick.
Yeah, and this is all Sims and stuff. And so like this, I hate that shot. She's shaking around. So at the time, there's a technique now that I use that I didn't know back then. And I'm not the first one to do this. But when I got into Houdini, you start to learn more about stuff like this. So you can see her, like when she shakes, you can see the kind of water, the oil or whatever kind of shake off of her a little bit. You know? And so there's always this thing with fluids, like how do I make fluids stay on?
Yeah.
You know, how do I make them sticky and stuff? Well, the real flow is really tough to do. Right. You just couldn't, you could do it, but it just couldn't really work that well. But now what you can do is what I like to do is I'll have my base sim go over the mesh and create an attribute like a wet or a wet map essentially. Right. But what I'll do is I'll mesh that attribute. Right. So what that will do is it will take my sim and adhere it to the surface. It will fake look like it's wet. Like if you get something wet, right, and you put some water on it, right, what will happen is the surface tension between the water surface and the water coming to touch it will come together as one, right? So that way it all looks cohesive, right? And I didn't deploy that technique here, so it kind of looks like it's all jumping around and stuff. And again, real flow. If anyone's ever used real flow, they'll know it was always kind of a pain to do stuff like this. So. But yeah, I thought either way it came out stylized, looked cool.
Well, that's the thing, right? It's an opener, so it's just who cares? Like it looks cool. It looks more chaotic.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. All right.
This is the Bifrost stuff. This was all done in Fume at the time. These sims took forever to do.
So would it be faster with Houdini now?
Yeah. Way easier. This stuff is like we were creating techniques for these tornadoes that were Sam Korshid, I originally great effects artist. He was over at Luma. He recommended me to come over, help out because he was leaving. He did some initial testing with thinking particles, excuse me, and Fume. And then I just kind of took over that and I made it into what it became as this here. So we have like 3 or 4 different sims in this thing. And some of these sims, one of my sims took a week to do.
Oh God.
And this is
so how
Fume,
do you, when you do these sims, this is what I don't understand with the effects side. It's like a sim could take, a few days to a week, or maybe could they even be longer? I mean, I don't know. How do you sacrifice? Like, it's like, what if that comes out and you're just like, this doesn't look that good.
There's no way around it. I mean, nowadays, I know this is for a feature film, of course, so you had a lot more time. But like that type of sim time is not acceptable for TV for sure. What you do is you try to get it to a resolution that will work. Hopefully when it's higher res, right? So you do a lot of lower-ish mid-res sims, get the movement down like you're thinking, okay, this is going to look good. Because if you do it too low and you then hey, we're going to go low, we're going to go super high, it doesn't always work out that way. It may be completely different.
Yeah.
especially back in the fume days. So you'd be like, oh, this looks really cool, low res. But as soon as I high res it, man, it looks like shit now. It doesn't look good. So you have to find a kind of used to have to find a kind of a sweet ground. You still kind of have to do that, not so much anymore, because with the GPU simming, with the Axiom and Houdini and stuff like that, it's easier to help visualize your stuff. You can plan it out better and have a better visualization of your data rather than having it just fucking taking. Dude, yeah, it's stressful, man. Like a lot of times what would happen is you would take your sim, it would be simming on a farm or something, and you would just load it in and next day or something, make sure it's looking okay, every day. Okay, this is looking okay. Okay, this is still looking okay. And every day, and hopefully by the end it looks okay, because then you could at least stop it midway through and be like, okay, this is not working. I have to rethink my idea here. So yeah, it used to be a really big gamble for sure. It was.
Well, is it possible to, you do a low res sim and then you pause it there and just up-res it there, or you get to do a whole new sim?
Yeah, there's up-resing techniques for sure. In Houdini, I don't use
just to
those
get
too
a
much
render
anymore.
to see like what it could look like,
Yeah, no, absolutely. We would do like mid-res renders and stuff to see, what I always love to do is I'll have what's a backup plan essentially is I'll do a mid-res sim. If it's all looking good to everybody, I'll send that out, render it, and then we'll have that as a backup too. And just as a good reference point, we need to make this just look higher res. And at what point do you have to think like, do I need this higher res? Like, would this help? Would this help convey this image better or this effect better? Sometimes you don't need as high res as you think. It's
That's
just,
interesting. So you're saying that sometimes even if it can be too high res where it doesn't look realistic?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, you could have too much detail into it.
Yeah.
Especially like, like I was saying with fire and stuff, too much detail sometimes is a killer of it. And especially with smoke and stuff too. Sometimes you don't want that much detail into it. Like a lot of people will look at explosions and they all have the VFX soup always has an idea of what his explosion looks like in his head. And sometimes they won't give you a reference point, but then you start looking at reference of actual explosions. There's not as much detail in explosions as you think there is. So you don't really always need this super duper high res stuff. The only time you really need really high res stuff is when you're really close to it and you're going to see voxels or something. Or you just need extra detail in like say, where the temperature is changing and it's turning to smoke or something like that. But yeah, you can always get away with, mid to high res, not, I wouldn't say low res. Even sometimes you can low res, depends on what you're doing. But yeah, it really depends on, and you have to and that comes with experience too, right? So you have to just kind of figure that out. And a lot of times, to go back to like a story time here, I was working on GI Joe back in the day, and they wanted all these jets to have fluids on them, right? So like their exhaust, they want the contrails to be fluid. And I was like, in a time, this was in 2009, I think, 2010, and there's no such thing as clustering. I only knew Max well enough. I knew Max really well. I knew Houdini at the time, but it wasn't like a viable effects tool. So we couldn't do clustering. We couldn't do anything. So they're like, oh, we're going to use fume. And these jets were going at real world speeds or real world distances, right? So that's insane. These things were going kilometers into the scene. And with the sim, as people know, that's just insane. So what I ended up doing was I used Afterburn, and Afterburn was for Max. It was a volumetric renderer. Basically, it just took particles that attach volumes. You can render it look like smoke, right? And what I ended up doing was just that, right? I just used that, and then I told them it was fluids, and they didn't know any better. Because it was just smoke. It's just a contrail, right? And it looked like fluid. I made it move a little bit differently, right? But it wasn't. In most of the shots, we were behind the camera and stuff. And now I could cull that volume out, but back then you couldn't. So you'd have all the sim data back here, and you have to like stop simming on each one. You'd have to go manually if you were going to do it via all fluids. It's just insane to me. So I ended up doing this really cheap approach. It worked. They didn't say anything. It all got approved. So that's another thing to.
I remember hearing a story of he was a lighter at DreamWorks, and he was telling us that the director was like super hyped that because he was looking at this like a helicopter falling into a sand or the ground, the sand, and there was like sand coming up into the camera and everything. And he's like, "Man, I'm a freaking genius for using the real effects sand in there." Meanwhile, on the back end, like the art team was actually simming sand and all CG, and they just let him have it. They're like, whatever. It's just kind of the same thing, you know. It's like just keep it to yourself. As long as you get the job done.
Yeah.
Just move
Yeah.
the project forward.
Yeah, exactly. If it looks good, it looks good.
Yeah. So is this just one sim, or are there bits and
Yeah, there's multiple sims in this. Yeah, so this initial sim we have coming down is one sim. Then we have a connecting and a couple of sims there for the mid and the outer parts. What I ended up doing for that was just initial sim and then kind of almost freezing that and then just turning it slightly on each one. So, and this gave us this, but yeah.
Cool. Is that just one? Is that two sims maybe? Or
Yeah,
three?
that's two sims. Yeah.
Two sims. Yeah.
And since it's so far away, we could get away with really a lowish res stuff. So that was pretty easy to do. Or I should say there's probably more because we had the impact and all that. But yeah, forgot about the impact.
Well, now they have that new I saw on Houdini with that kind of look, the circular explosion look. You know, like the rings come
the
off
ground.
of it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Now it's like I guess easier in Houdini now to do that stuff, or
yeah, it gives you a good starting point for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of just using the presets in Houdini to start out with, you know, especially for the water stuff. It just adds all the stuff you're going to make anyways. But yeah, a lot of times just, use the shelf tools, man. Like there's nothing wrong with the shelf tools. Just use them and then take them apart and then make them your own, because a lot of times they get you at least a setup going and you don't have to like hand create all those nodes, but you should know what's going on with those nodes, of course. But it's definitely good to have setups and.
Oh, that's cool. I like this orb that you have right in here.
Yeah, this is interesting. This was actually done with this piece was done with thinking particles and Phoenix, and we ended up like breaking all the windows and all this crazy stuff for this. Yeah,
cool.
Yeah, the orb is just a piece of geo that I rendered out that has 3 different layers of noise on it. And then we just gave that to comp, and then they just they did their magic with that.
So you had 3 different renders of different noises that you sent to them?
Oh, there we go. Got cut out there for a second. Yeah, so I had 3 different layers, like an RGB noise layer. So it's a noisy sphere, but with different colors of noise. So it had like, big noise, medium noise, and a small noise.
Yeah.
And I had animated on a half sphere and then just animated it, and then with some motion blur and gave it to comp, and then they used that as distortion in comp.
Yeah, makes sense. So it wasn't like 3 different renders. It was one orb.
Just one, yeah. It's almost like a game thing, right? So that's kind of stuff you learn from gaming too, is putting all of your channels into one file. Like you can put something in the red channel, the blue channel, the green channel, and the alpha channel, and then you could just do the same thing in regular VFX too.
That's cool.
Yeah.
All right, cool. So is that let's see, you got this stuff, but all right, so this one, the home stretch here, let's just check these out.
Yeah, these are just some old blur things that we did. Of course, all done in Max at this time. This is probably my favorite reel that I've ever made, just because I took a lot of time to edit it.
Back in 2014. Cool.
This is cool. So this is probably one of the most rewarding things I've ever worked on. I did everything in here, including like the final comp, pretty much. All this watt, man. So this is wild. So I ended up writing tools for RealFlow for this to work. I wrote some tools so that the water would circle correctly. There's this thing in RealFlow called a D-spline. It just wasn't working the way I wanted it to work. So I ended up taking this whole approach of finding targets and then scripting that together for this whole system that I built with Python to go through here and do this correctly, and like have the right fall off and all this stuff. All this is done in Fusion Comp with 3D. Like all this water you see as he looks down and even on falling on her. I'm using all types of elements, water, like real plate elements, to make
Real
this look
plate.
more real
Oh,
too.
cool.
So like I was taking like, dude, we were like, this was insane. I was sleeping at the studio at the time. We were like
God, I hope
doing,
we got paid well.
no, back then it wasn't. It was like crazy how much I made. But yeah, no, it was cool. I ended up 3D comping all this stuff. This is probably one of my most rewarding shots that I pulled off, because it just, I
It's
didn't do, of course.
yours, it feels like your baby.
Yeah, I mean, like I didn't do the lighting animation, of course, but I had to, make it all work with all this effects. So it was, and the only way we could render this out too was kind of wild. At the time, I think we were using Mental Ray. Funny enough, I think
Oh,
it was
wow.
Mental Ray. Yeah, so the RealFlow mesh was so big that our computers at Blur couldn't handle it. And so RealFlow, I contacted RealFlow, and they're like, "Hey, we're working on this kind of like secret thing right now. You totally try it out, Blur. It'd be great to have you testing it." And so what it ended up doing was I didn't have to write out the meshes. So what would happen is, I think now it's all out. It's been out for a long time. I don't know if they still have it for Macs, but essentially you would attach a material to your particles that you'd bring in, so you wouldn't have to write out the meshes, and so you would make the mesh on the fly for you at render time, and that reduced the memory overhead a lot. So that was the only way we could get this to render, and this is right before Christmas, and it was wild, man. We got this all rendered out. Darren Butler was on this project with me. I gave him the mesh and showed him how to set up the rendering and stuff. So he helped render the big main part of the stuff out in the big thing, and I rendered out all the spray, and I comped all in the extra elements that help it tie together. But this was a pretty wild shot. This whole sequence was wild. I mean, this isn't even the whole sequence, but it's pretty insane. Yeah.
So how'd you get into learning Python?
Uh, Really from RealFlow. Funny enough. So I started to. When I first started RealFlow way back when, it was like 2007, I think. So RealFlow 2 and RealFlow 3 came out. I really got into. I always kind of liked programming. Always had some basic programming knowledge, but then knowing I can make stuff that will I can see happen in front of me.
Yeah.
It's not some esoteric kind of theoretical thing. Seeing like 3D stuff working in front of me, it helped. Like, I get it now. So I ended up I even wrote entire pipeline tools for RealFlow while I was at Blur.
Oh, wow.
For all this to work. But yeah.
That's crazy. So was it like how'd you go about learning the Python?
Well,
People
learned
because
this documentation, and then
Yep.
there was a programmer at Blur. His name was Carl Goldschmidt. Shout out to Carl. He taught me a lot of stuff about Python while I was there. That guy's like a human computer. Fantastic dude. Yeah, so I would always ask him to look over my scripts and be like, "Hey, I'm getting this weird error. What does this mean?" He's like, "Oh, we got to do this, and this." Oh, okay, cool. So he'd show me, go over my code with me. So I actually worked with him again at DreamWorks. Funny enough, he's one of the big programmers there now. And he's like, "Hey, there he is." I was like, "Hey," yeah. He goes, "I taught him everything he knows about Python." I'm like, "Yeah, you did actually." You did. So that was great, being in the studio at the time, right? I could go to someone who knows this stuff and be like,
Yeah,
"Hey."
that's the nice thing about working in the studio, especially if you're like, I feel like no junior should work from home. Like they need to be in the studio and learn.
There's something to be said about that. You know what I do sometimes too is I'll have what's called jam sessions. If I have a colleague, we'll just watch each other work sometimes.
Oh, really?
Yeah. We'll both screen share. We'll just be working, won't say anything, and then we'll just kind of look over like, "Oh, that's kind of cool. What are you doing there? Oh, that's cool." Especially if we're working on the same sort of stuff or the same show.
Yeah.
Especially, or they're having a problem. I'm always big about screen sharing, and again, always share your knowledge. I've only run into an issue really big once in my career. It was with a guy. I won't name his name, but I'll just say this: everyone has a story about him. But he was one of these guys that he was like, I can't tell you how I'm doing this, and he would delete. Like he would go and delete stuff out of his files before he gave them to me, so he couldn't see it. Yeah. And I'd have to like. I remember one time he asked me to take out particle flow and V-Ray out of his file because his contract. He said he couldn't touch that stuff, and I was like, "What do you?" I was like, "No, dude, I'm not. Just do it yourself. Like, I'm not. Are you fucking kidding me? Get the fuck out of here with that." Yeah, that type of elitist kind of attitude, it's not so prevalent now. I've worked with some people that are kind of like that, but not really. Most everyone is, especially at a supervisor level. If it's coming from you, then people are more willing to share. So if you're a supervisor, like kind of instill that into your artist and just be like, hey man, like, and also let them know you don't know everything,
Yeah.
and don't ever back down from a junior, or don't I want to say back down, but don't ever just take a junior's artist advice as just like, whatever, he's a junior. It's like, sometimes they're more up on technology than you are. And it's good to listen to them because they bring in an enthusiasm and sometimes a vigor that you just don't have because either you're a supervisor, you're older now, you have a family, and you're not keeping up with all the tech. So it's always good to listen to your junior artists, even though they're not as experienced as you production wise. So.
Yeah, for sure. Like there's definitely people that want to stick with the old school way and not really actually push forward the tech or, try to always want to improve, let's say, techniques and stuff because they're just set in their ways. Yeah. And it's like, all right, whatever.
Yeah, no, I mean, I've fallen trapped to that stuff too, man. Like, I mean, recently just getting into Solaris and USD, I've been forcing myself to learn that stuff. But I guess I'm in the same pool as everyone else. I've been coming to find out it's just tough. It's hard because you're really upheaving the entire pipeline system when you're learning that stuff. But yeah, especially if you're older and your supervisor, like, dude, just stay up. You don't even have to be knowledgeable about it.
Well, the industry is constantly something new coming out every fucking day. It's exhausting actually to always keep up with
it. It is, especially for CG people, man. Like compositors, you got Nuke.
Yeah. That's
fun.
it.
Like, go fun with that. Yeah. 3D, especially as a CG soup, I have to keep up on like ZBrush. I have to keep up on, I even still keep up on the Mac stuff, just, keep an eye on it. There's recently the new TieFlow stuff came out. That looked really, really cool.
I wish Maya had some of those plugins that Max has. Like, come on, Maya.
Yeah, man.
Get together.
Maya is great for animation, but and they have Bifrost. I just don't know anyone who uses Bifrost. It was going to be awesome, but and the whole idea behind Bifrost is actually pretty cool. But it's just it's not Houdini, and I think more now you got Blender, who's kind of coming in as Houdini Junior with their geometry nodes and stuff just knowing this stuff, right? Knowing like, hey, you got this out here, you got Embergen, which is good for games.
Yeah. So you want to talk about Embergen at all? Because I saw it was interesting. I saw a conversation about that this morning on LinkedIn. Someone saying like, everyone just doesn't want to use Embergen, but then look at this. I did this in Embergen in like 2 seconds, blah, blah, blah. I think he was some like effects guy.
I think it was Andy Byrne. I think my buddy. I think it's.
Oh, and then I saw like in the comments, someone just literally breaking down how it's not great. But then the actual that dude that actually works on Embergen responded, and he's like, "These are all valid points. We're working on Embergen 2.0." You saw that whole thing?
Yeah. No, the idea, because I used to be I still am kind of a supporter of Embergen. I think it's good to have competition and be able to use different systems. Embergen is great. Like, there's nothing wrong with using Embergen. It's fucking fast. A couple downsides to it for me personally as an artist or just working in a pipeline. Not everyone's going to use it. Not everyone's an early adopter of it. 2, it's a third-party program outside of your DCC. The problem with that is you have to jump outside of your program and do something else completely different. You have to bring that data back in and render it, make sure it looks good. I think Embergen can do all the rendering and all that good stuff now too, which is great. There's nothing wrong with it. There are other technical issues with it that I don't see the reason why. I have Axiom that can both use CPU and GPU. So if my GPU memory runs out, just go CPU. It's going to be slower, but I'm going to get the exact same look with the CPU. And then I don't have to mess with any of the data outside of it. I don't have to like fix stuff, re-export it back into Embergen, bring it back in. It's the same workflow as RealFlow essentially, right?
Yeah.
Almost. So those are the downsides for me to it. It is fast and it's awesome. It looks great. I think it's a very good application for games and people who just don't want to fucking use Houdini. It's you don't
Do you
have to
think the
buy
quality equals Houdini?
Oh yeah, I think so. I think the quality for sure equals and like I see all the tests. I even used to use it back when it was early on up until 1.0. And I just had a license of it at home. I'd mess with it and did some stuff with it. But yeah, but you're limited to your VRAM at that point though, right? So as soon as your VRAM runs out, then that's it. You have to lower it. And hopefully you got a big enough video card with RAM on it, like a Quadro A6, A6000 or 5000 or something to get your sims going. But
interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's awesome because it's so cheap. And if you just need to do some smoke sims, like, yeah, go ahead.
I see some good fire sims on there.
And they have a ton of awesome presets for you.
Yeah.
Which is really cool, right? They have starter files for everything. So that makes the barrier to entry really low.
Yeah. For someone like me, for instance, like I just want to get some little torches out there, Yeah. Just get some Emergen in there.
Yeah, absolutely. See, yeah, it's stuff like that. Yeah. I mean, I think it's fantastic. I just don't think there's any big studios that are going to be like, hey, let's use Emergen right now. I mean, there's no.
Let's see what the 2.0 turns out to be like, because apparently there's a lot of awesome progress on 2.0 according to his comment. So we'll see. So what you do on this? So that with that explosion and the fire magic stuff.
Magic sword. We got the old rock getting split in half. That was all hand animated stuff.
Hand animated.
Yeah, so we ended up taking that rock, I split it in two, like I cut it in half, and then I just hand animated the pieces, and then had a
what?
Yeah, because you can't just that sort of stuff too. You have to hand animate to make it look just right, and then I just had some debris coming out of the central part. That was just an emission system. It didn't have anything to do with the rock. Yeah.
So for the rotation on the pieces, did you have just a script to give it random rotation?
Yeah, this is all P-flow, so it's just random rotation stuff. Yeah, it was pretty straightforward. And this was cool. Yeah. So this I didn't do the hammer for this guy. Brandon Reiser did the hammer, and I did the crushing of the stairs, and that was all thinking particles.
You doing the lightsabers?
No, I did this scene right here. I did all that. A lot of that was hand animated too. So.
Man, so there's a lot of So when you say hand animated, are you saying I'm going to take this piece, animate it up like that, animate it up?
Yep.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. So I took I fractured all this stuff in. We had a bark layer, and then we had a tree layer that we requested for effects. I used Rayfire to cut everything up into wood shards. Then I selectively took pieces and animated them popping out, and then I had a particle system that popped out some fragments, and then I rotated the entire tree at the end to kind of like it's popping off and cracking. That's all hand animated too. So,
man, okay. And now you're saying you're using Rayfire. Is that for breaking?
That's
stuff?
Max. Yeah,
Max. Okay, so this would all be done Houdini now.
Yeah, this will all be done Houdini for sure. Okay. I mean, I would. Yeah, you can still do it in Max. And this is all thinking particles and fume, and this is thinking particles. This was actually pretty tough, man. This is before Houdini had any good point-based solvers. And I was using Houdini actually on this project for other stuff, but I ended up having to use thinking particles for this. I was trying to get this clumping look to it. It was tough. It was tough to get. I'm not exactly super happy with that, but I think it came out all right. Because you can kind of see the Voronoi fractures in some areas. Yeah. It's not clumpy like we would do normally in Houdini. Now in Houdini, this would be super easy to do.
Yeah.
Comparatively. Yeah.
Well, now I remember when was it Frost, and they're showing off the snow clumping and scenes. And now isn't that built into Houdini now or something like that?
Yeah. You can do all the clumping and stuff inside there. Yeah.
Because that was all custom Disney made, and they were showing it off. Yeah. Things are just getting easier and easier. Soon you just tell it, and AI does it for you.
Yeah.
All right, man. Yeah, I know, right? All right. So awesome work, dude. Yeah. So on here, It's not updated because it's just a test. So I'll just go to environment real quick. And also, you don't have any images on there. I just want to point something out so people know. If you do upload images, you can actually comment. Okay. So I have to actually adjust this, and then I need to. So you can, I have pop-ups for the images. So if you go at home, you just quickly load an image and then close it there and load and close it, so you don't lose it and go press back to get everything. And also the images can be completely like full res, giant, and then you can double click. You can put in, like, there's no limit like ArtStation has for what you want to upload, so you can really zoom in and stuff. But anyway, so it's missing a feature on here, so you actually have to hit on view more. I'll try to put it on in the pop-up, but you can actually comment with markups. So if you want to say like, hey, this area, cool, like,
yeah.
So you can just as part of the whole like community trying to help each other out, you can just quickly just make some stuff to like, and then give it advice. I don't have it working with a Wacom tablet yet. I'm working on that. So right now it's just with the mouse, but yeah, you can change the colors of what you want. Woo. So that'll show up as like in your comment as a thumbnail, and they can click on it and get the same size image. And so you can help each other out with the critiques. And also, if you go to, let's say, the profile, you can see the blog. There's a tab for blog. So if people go to, if I actually view it as a public profile, you'll see blog. And that's how you can check out people's blogs and stuff. So this is the site, and this is Brandon's work. Go back to FX area, and you can filter it with latest and everything. Anyway, there's a bunch of stuff. So yeah, thanks for coming on, man. Really appreciate it. You can check out your black and white version of it. And it was awesome catching up with you.
Yeah, man, absolutely. It was fun.
This was totally fun. And spread the word of ATMO. Let's help make it a better site and help it grow and help support.
Yeah, man, nice job. It's impressive what you got put together so far. So
thanks, appreciate it. Hopefully you guys won't just be hanging out on Facebook groups anymore, and just share it up on here, and then you can search people's names and check it out. Right?
Yeah.
All right. Thanks for coming on, man. Thanks again. This has been great. A lot of fun.
Yeah, man, absolutely. Anytime.
Yeah. All right. Keep in touch. And that's it. All right. Bye-bye.